Hi everyone, and welcome to Deep Geek Live. Today we're carrying on our series of live streams looking at different parts of the world of Planetos. We moved all the way to the far side of Essos last time. This time we're coming back to Westeros, but we're looking north of the wall. So what is there? Who is there? What's going on? We're going to be covering all of that. As always, I will frame this around questions I get from my patrons. And I'm going to try and pick up as many questions as I can in the chat as we are going through. But what I try to do on these live streams is just give a little bit of a flavor to start with of some of the things that are going on with filming and the like for fantasy TV shows, books and the like. So we have a bit more information about both The Witcher and The Wheel of Time, which I shall quickly get you up to speed with. The Witcher. Season 2, I think I've already mentioned, Season 2 is going to happen this year. They finished filming it and they're now in post-production. That is going to appear, we've been told, in Q4 of this year, which means October, November, December. So we've got that already in the diary. But there are two spin-offs that we've got from The Witcher. One of them is called Nightmare of the Wolf. Now, this is an anime. It's a one-off, an anime film, and this is about Vesemir, if you know Vesemir being the old Witcher in the world of The Witcher, basically Geralt's mentor, and this is his origin story. So we don't know when to expect that. It's going to be this year, we're told, but we do not know huge amounts more about the timing, but any time in the next few. But the perhaps even more exciting news is the other spin-off is a live action and short series which is called Blood Omen, which is very exciting. This is looking way back in history at the conjunction of the spheres. What is it that made the world of the continent, the world of the Witcher, have all of these monsters? The monsters arriving, this led to the creation of the Witchers. These monsters that are there, they do not belong in the ecosystems of that world. They came in from elsewhere. And so we're going to explore why that happened, what happened then, and how this led to the creation of the Witchers. So that's really exciting. Now that has we've just been given confirmation this week, has been heading into pre-production. That means they're going to start filming soon. I would expect that then to be arriving some point around this time next year. So The Witcher, we've got the main series and two spin-offs. They may even be looking at more, but that's what we've got so far. The Wheel of Time, for those who are fans of The Wheel of Time, The Wheel of Time Season 1 has finished filming. This means that we're expecting it to appear again before the end of the year. I would think The Witcher Season 2 and Wheel of Time Season 1 sometime around November, maybe December, for both of them. And they have greenlit Season 2 already. So they're going to start filming Season 2 very, very soon, even next month, as I understand it. So we've got a lot to look forward to already. House of the Dragon, as we know, filming is carrying on. They started that just a week or so ago. And the Lord of the Rings TV show, they're doing an amazingly good job, it has to be said, of keeping the details secret, but they are towards the end of filming Season 1. So we're expecting that somewhere around the first few months of next year. So that's an update of where we're at on various TV shows. I'm planning on covering, at the moment, I'm definitely covering House of the Dragon. I will definitely be covering The Winds of Winter if it happens, when it happens. Have faith, Robert, have faith. When it happens. The Lord of the Rings TV show, I will definitely be covering. The Witcher, I will definitely be covering. The Wheel of Time, I'm waiting for the trailer before making a decision, but I think there's a good chance I will probably do a video or two on that as well. Ryan Larkin, thank you so much for the super sticker. I hugely appreciate that. It's a cup of tea, I think, going on there. Prairie Sky, thank you for the super sticker earlier. And I had a few super chats that I'm going to. Sorry, I just got attention taken. MJ Short saying they're making an Elric series. If they are, I've not heard of it, but I would be very, very interested in that. There's a lot of things in the background. Netflix have bought the rights to Narnia, all of Narnia, not just a few of the stories. We've got a Redwall series, the rights have been bought for that, and Conan as well. So there's a huge amount of things just sort of somewhere lost in pre-production, so we might hear a bit more about them as we come through. Joe McKeown saying, "Hi, Robert. Working my way through your past live streams. Just wanted to say thank you. Please, can you shout out to my friend Celia? She's a big fan." Hi, Celia. Great to see you. So, Dustin Fock, thank you. Doing a fist bump super sticker. Thank you very much for that. And Greasy Strangler saying, "I'm your biggest fan. Thank you for entertaining us." Thank you very much. Kim Sandberg saying, "I love the content you're producing. When I go to bed, I listen to the Traveler's Guides episodes. Gets me every time." I'm assuming that gets you asleep every time. This is something I've been told, which I don't take offense at in the slightest. Totesprechen Leben Langer saying, "Hey, Robert, forgot to write on Patreon this week, so I'll ask here. Was Mother Mole successfully rescued, or will she be? Will she appear in person?" So Mother Mole, for those who do not know, is a wildling, wise woman, seer, prophet, who, after the defeat of the wildlings by Stannis' army, she had this prophecy that they should go, all of the wildlings should head over to Hardhome, and I think I scribbled down what a vision of a fleet of ships coming to carry the wildlings away to safety across the narrow sea. The wildlings, those that did not pass south, followed her advice. They were looking for any kind of leadership, and they followed her advice, and they all headed over to Hardhome. Now, the books are slightly different than the TV show. The TV show obviously made a big thing of Jon Snow went up to Hardhome, and there was the big rescue mission and all the rest of it. That's not happened quite in the same way in the books. They have sent some men of the Night's Watch up there, and we're getting occasional reports back by Raven from them. Things don't seem to be going very well. So, Mother Mole, no, we know no more about her at the moment. I suspect we probably won't see her again. We won't know much about her. She's just this one of... George R. Martin loves writing these characters that sound really intriguing. She's called Mother Mole, interestingly, because she lives under a tree, in like a hole under a tree. We don't even know, was that a weirwood tree? We're not entirely sure. Does this mean that she had a weirwood dream? Again, we do not know. There's a huge amount we don't know, but this is the kind of thing George R. R. Martin likes to create, these characters that make us just think for a moment about what is it that's going on there. Who is this person? How much can we trust them? The bit that I find intriguing here is this vision of a fleet of ships that can carry people away across to safety across the narrow sea. Now, that doesn't seem to me to be the Night's Watch ships, because they're not going across the narrow sea. Across the narrow sea is over to Essos. So are there going to be more ships? Where might these other ships come from? That, I think, for me, is the most intriguing thing. And I suspect what we're going to find, the situation in Hardhome in the books, is going to be a lot more complicated than it was on the show. It made for a great episode, actually, on the show, and you get that kind of standoff between Jon and the Night King and all the rest of it. I suspect it will be a lot more complicated. Some stragglers will probably manage to be taken by the Night's Watch south of the Wall. Some other ships may well appear, which may well take them eastwards. Who might they be? Well, they might even be slaving ships. We hear lots of reports at the moment of slaving ships roving up the narrow sea. So that's because the slaving infrastructure, and this is huge digression, but this is one of the things that George R. Martin does do really quite well, is he thinks about the infrastructure of industries effectively. And the slavery infrastructure in Essos has been absolutely ripped apart because Danny is going out there and abolishing slavery in Slavers Bay and all the rest of it. And so that is causing a problem because the slaves entered the system through Slavers Bay and then went off to other places. Now, if that pipeline gets shut off, the demand for slaves in the free cities is not going to be reduced. So people will be looking for slaves elsewhere. Hence, this shift away from just looking for slaves in Essos to perhaps raiding over into Westeros, which we are seeing a little bit of. So it's entirely possible that there might be some slaver ships heading there. The safety away from the others, yes, but also into slavery. It's one of these things where you can't really trust prophecy. Yes, it may well be technically true, safety away from the others, but actually not really what you ideally want. Brooke Lacone, thank you very much. Hello from Washington, DC. Hi. This is my first time watching live. Sorry, it just disappeared on me there. First time watching live, but I've been a fan for a long time. Just wanted to say thanks for the amazing content. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And welcome to watching live. I hope you get involved in the chat as well while you are here. Roman Lakovets, do you have any idea when George R. R. Martin must turn in the manuscript for Winds for it to be released this year? Ish. I think for him to turn in, well, okay, I'll take a step back actually here. The indications are, and I'm well past making predictions now, so I'm not going to make any predictions about when, but the indications are he is approaching the end of his process. Now, the last bit of his process is that I think he calls it his sweat through. Having finished it, he sent it off to editors. He's got their comments back. He then goes through line by line over the process of weeks and does a final edit of every single jot and tittle. And that's what he does. At the end of that process, that is when he hands it over. Now, that seems to be the point at which he probably will announce that he has finished it. This is what he did with the Dance of Dragons. He said, did a blog post that basically announced, that's it, I finished writing it, is now in other people's hands. Once the book is there, a number of things then have to happen, because it obviously doesn't just appear on sort of in bookshops and all the rest of it. They will have to make big decisions about how many languages is this going to be translated into. They will want to get somebody to record the audiobook. That will take some time. Obviously, printing is going to take a little bit of time. The distribution will take a little while. They will want to get a few pre-released copies out to a very small number of people, I'm sure, with non-disclosure agreements, so that they can get a few previews and all the rest of it. The generally accepted industry standard, as I understand it, is that process you could do for a big publication like this, you could do in 3 months. I think that given how big it is, they will want, and how huge a publishing event this is going to be, particularly after what's happened over the last 18 months. Bookshops have been closed. This is going to be a huge boost for the publishing industry. They will want this out as soon as they possibly can. They will also want, if at all possible, to be timing this for Christmas. They will probably have 2 releases, one with the hardback, one with the softback. But 3 months is the short answer. Give or take, it may take a little bit longer, it may take a little bit less time, but that is roughly the order of things. So if he announced tomorrow that he has finished writing it and it's now with the publishers to do with as they will, then they will choose a date to go for, which is something, where are we now? May, June, July, August. So sometime in August. So that's the sort of timescale we're looking at. Googly Woogly, hey there, Googly Woogly. Hey, Robert, thanks as usual for doing what you do. What's up with Val? Who is she? Where does she come from? What's the end game with that character? I think I might do a whole video on Val at some point. Val is a fascinating character. I don't feel I've quite got to the bottom of her either, to be honest. But Val is a book-only character. She is known as a wildling princess. Now, this is obviously not accurate because they do not have royalty north of the wall. She is very beautiful. She is very strong-willed. She's very clever. She's very opinionated. She is clearly a charismatic leader as well. Now, and it should be said, north of the wall, quite a lot of the tribes will get into the culture in a bit, I'm sure, but there's lots of different tribes with their own individual cultures, and quite a few of them are female-led matriarchal societies. So she is very much a leader. Now, a lot of people are vying for her hand in marriage. When I say a lot of people, people at Castle Black, people who are coming in as part of Stannis's troop, and all of not the Night's Watch, but also the some of the wildlings as well. Who is she? I think she is just a figurehead. Literally, this is a figurehead for a lot of the wildlings, and her views will be important. Her views are going to be important, particularly with things like Shireen. She has a very strong view that anyone who's got grayscale, if they were a child with grayscale, they would be killed. And she thinks that it's a danger to have Shireen still alive. And this is going to play into the plot in as much as this isn't just going to be Melisandre who says we should kill Shireen and burn her. Actually, we'll get Val trying to get people on side as well, because she sees that as just, it's the sensible thing to do. You should have done this when she was a lot younger. So she is going to be there as this figurehead of the wildlings, because we've got Tormund as well, but Tormund is going to, first of all, maybe he'll head up north of the wall, maybe he'll come down with Jon, but he is not, whereas on the show he was just like the figurehead of the wildlings. George R. R. Martin has got a few different characters to show us that the wildlings are not just one amorphous mass, they have a number of different leaders. So that is what her role in this story is. She will probably, having played that role with Shireen, after that, I would imagine that she will take on a leadership role for a bulk of the wildlings, the ones that are not going with Tormund. So the Tormund ones are going to effectively fall in with Jon. She is going to be the slightly more independent leader. But as I say, I think she's a fascinating character, and I think that there are more layers there as well that I haven't yet dug into, that I will get to in a full video at some point. Johnny Stevenson saying, love you. Thank you very much. If the far north is frozen, and assuming Planetos is round, have we been given any reason to believe there is an Antarctic analogue? Well, I think you've given the reasons why it's there. We appear to be looking effectively at the northern hemisphere. So we have, the further north you go, the colder it gets, and then the further south you go, the hotter it gets. And then you get the areas, the southern bits of Essos, and then you move further down even to Zathorios and the Summer Isles. They are even hotter. But we do not know at all what's down in the southern hemisphere. The clear implication, yes, there is some sort of Antarctic going on down there. But George R. R. Martin has said he has deliberately not done the whole map. He's only done the little bit that we know about, because he is doing it from the perspective of the people of Westeros. This is what they know. That people have never done. They've never explored those parts, so they simply do not know. Therefore, he has not given us that information. So the answer is yes, there is, because it is a planet like any other as far as we can tell, but the characters within this have absolutely no experience of it, so we will have absolutely no experience of it. Question from I think I did have another question. One Big Dingus saying RIP to Kentaro Miura, another legendary dark fantasy artist author. Have you read his series Berserk? It's tremendous manga. I have not, no. Always like recommendations. I'm not often a manga person. I do occasionally like a bit of manga, but I'm not au fait with that. So I will check it out. It's something I am looking to get into a little bit more, it has to be said. But thank you. Smith Crazy, thank you very much, saying, am I crazy for thinking that outside of that whole White Walkers and the Whites part, living beyond the wall might be relatively peaceful and chill? Not crazy, chilled, perhaps. It depends on your perspective. They are free folk. This is how they understand it. They do not kneel, so they don't have lords. So every person lives without the rules and regulations that you have south of the wall. Now, does that make it more peaceful and chill? I guess sometimes, but also it means that there's no protection if a stronger clan comes in and just decides to attack your clan. There's no one there to protect you, so it's more lawless is basically what I'd say, and I guess that's up to you to decide whether that makes it slightly more relaxed and chilled or slightly less relaxed and hot, so to speak. Question from Vladimir Raskian. The question is about something that's on the wall, not behind it. What's on the painting or photo behind my back? The one that's up there. That is, and people do ask this a bit. It's by the wonderful artist Vanessa Cole. Highly recommend you check out Vanessa Cole's work. I wish I could show you. I do this every now and then. She does excellent portraits from Game of Thrones as well as Westworld and various other things. That is Westworld. There's a whole series of characters from Westworld on that. I've got a few of her different sketches and bits of artwork, so I'm a big fan. I'm sure somebody, one of the moderators in the chat, will drop a link into her webpage. She really is very good. We have lots of excellent artists in this community. It has to be said. It's something we're very blessed with. Cloaked One for Will Forum. Thank you so much for picking up a question for someone else. I love it when people do this. How will Val react to John being resurrected? Accepting or superstitious? Well, this is a fascinating one. I think she may well be superstitious. Although it does depend on how this is framed. Now, the way Melisandre will pitch it, and I'll sort of explain what I mean by that. So the way Melisandre will pitch it is that this is the Red God bringing John back from the flames, or something along those lines. That is how she is going to see it. That is how she's going to explain it to people. That is what all of the Queen's men and the Stannis followers up there at the wall, that's what their understanding will be. However, that is almost certainly not what's actually happened. What has actually happened, or what will actually happen, is John will warg into Ghost and then be pulled back into his body. Now, that she will understand, because north of the wall, warging is... I wouldn't say normal, but a lot more normal than it is south of the wall. So people just understand that this is something others can do. There are clear rules about what wargs are not allowed to do. They're not allowed to go into the bodies of other humans. They're not allowed to eat humans while in their body. The warg of the animal that they're warging into can't eat human flesh, things like that. But John is not likely to do that, or at least they won't know that he's done those things. So if she understands that that is what happened, then I think she would be accepting. But in terms of the way that Melisandre will try and pitch it, then perhaps not. Question from Cloaked One, again picking up something for someone else. Thank you so much. Saying, for Crystal James, we see a glimpse of the White Walker Stronghold in the show. Do you think something like that will be in the books? Ish. By which I mean that one of the things that George R. R. Martin said a while ago, while he was still giving us little hints, which is incredibly intriguing, is that in the Winds of Winter, we will go further north than we have so far. Now, I find this fascinating because he's also said we're not going to have any new POV characters. No major ones. Yes, there might be prologue and or epilogue characters, but no new major POV characters. Now, Bran is north of the Wall, but he's probably going to be heading back down south again. We've got other characters like Davos and Sam who were at the Wall and they've gone down south. Jon is at the Wall, but there's no clear plot reason for him to be heading particularly far north. I mean, if he goes north of the Wall at all, which he probably won't, there's no reason to think why he would go further north than the Fist of the First Men, which is where we've already seen. So how are we going to see this? Well, it's either Bran in his visions traveling further north, or somebody else who has traveled there telling a character about it. Now, I'm going to come back to this because I think this is one of the most exciting possibilities. It's still just a possibility, but one of the most exciting possibilities. But this is a matter of where do the White Walkers, where do the others come from? Bran, in his vision in book 1, Bloodraven shows him the Heart of Winter. We don't get a description of that at all. It's just this throwaway remark. I'll read it in a bit as well because I've got a specific question on it. But he sees the Heart of Winter. We don't get much of a description of what that is, but the implication is that that's sort of like the base, the hub, the heart of where the others are coming from. So I do not think that we're going to see firsthand through a POV character the White Walker's base or stronghold, as you say, but I think that we may well get some more information from other characters for there. Lady Gordon, thank you so much, Lady Gordon. That's incredibly generous super chat. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Greetings to you and gorgeous Dan. Will we find out what happened to Benjen? Will George R. R. Martin leave that a mystery? John thinks about him a lot. Seems like George R. R. Martin originally probably was going to resolve it. Any thoughts? Random question. Have you seen The Nevers on HBO? Well, on that last bit, I haven't seen The Nevers. Do tell me if it's good. I'm always keeping an eye out for good new things to be watching. This links in, actually, I will get to this now. I've got other questions on this, but I'll answer this one now. This links into the last question about how we might see further north. Benjen it's the intriguing possibility. Benjen, and rereading Game of Thrones Book 1, which I am doing at the moment, or re-listening to it. If you're interested in my thoughts as I go through chapter by chapter, do check me out on Twitter. I put them there. Just go to Twitter and search for In Deep Geek. You will find me. Going through that, it is very obvious that Benjen's disappearance is one of the big mysteries of Book 1. George R. R. Martin has set it up as one of the big mysteries. He could have had Benjen go off and disappear and just have it as a hook for the Great Ranging a little bit later and not mention it much more. But it comes up all the time. every single John chapter so far, I'm about 2/3 of the way through so far, every single John chapter so far, he thinks about Benjen. Where is he? People keep on saying, he knew the haunted forest backwards. We know that he survived a bit. There's the slash marks on trees that they know that he went certain ways. Yes, they found the bodies of some of his companions, but not his. So the question you have to ask is, why hasn't he come back? Well, what did he go to do? He went off to try and figure out what happened to Waymar Royce, and also where are all of the wildlings going, because there's something going on. He almost certainly will have discovered the sorts of things that we've discovered going through, the great ranging discovered going through, which is that the wildlings were gathering Mance Rayder, was gathering them together because there was a threat from the north, because of the others were starting to return. Hints about this. What does Benjen do? Does he return back without much information to the wall? No, he carries on. He tries to discover more. When the Great Ranging got as far as the Fist of the First Men, they were going to send people. Well, they did, in fact, send parties out further on to discover more, see what's going on. Clearly, J.R. Mormont wanted to discover more about what was going on before returning back to the safety of the wall. That, I suspect, is the same thought process that went through Benjen. So that's a long preamble to say that Benjen, I think, he didn't die. We've not seen his body. We've seen no hints of it. All of the suggestions are that he is perfectly capable of surviving out in the wild for long periods of time. He discovered some stuff and just carried on following the clues. And I think it may well be through his eyes somehow that we find out what's even further north, beyond the Frostfang Mountains. I think that he will return. Now, there could be, George R. R. Martin could take this any one of many different ways. He's not cold hands, incidentally. We have confirmation of that. This was a leaked page of editorial comment. An editor wrote next to a mention of cold hands saying, "Is this Benjen? I think this is Benjen." And George R. R. Martin just wrote, "Nope." So Benjen is not cold hands. I don't think he's dead. I think he's definitely investigating, and I think he will come back. Now, George R. R. Martin can play this in a number of different ways. It could just be that Benjen goes out, discovers some information, comes back, and tells us about it. Who does he tell? Maybe he meets up with Bran, maybe Bloodraven, maybe he even makes it back as far as the wall. Or maybe he gets captured. There are a huge amount of other possibilities. If he does get captured, were they just going to kill him? Does he escape into this kind of world? Like Cold Hands appears to be this sort of half and half kind of world of part alive, part dead. Might they have him as a hostage? We've not heard anything about them doing that kind of thing, but he's a Stark, and the Starks seem to have quite a special place in the history further north. So what might happen? In any event, I think that George R. R. Martin set up the Benjen storyline so strongly because Benjen was going to return to the story later on. I think it's through Benjen that we discover more about the others, because the others aren't going to have a conversation with people. They speak a completely different language. They don't seem to be intent on having any discussions with anyone. They're just trying to kill them. And so we need a spy who has gone there, who can come back and give us some information. So that's my grand Benjen theory. It's I don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but I think he's still alive, and I think that he is going to be the person who is going to give us the extra information about the others that and the even further north that we've been promised by George R. R. Martin that we are going to be getting. Sean McDee saying, first time, long time. Love your work. Thank you very much indeed. Katie Smith saying, hi, Robert. Thank you very much for the super chat. Saying, hi, Robert. Do you think there will be a figurehead like the Night King from the show for the others? Do you think they have an established hierarchy? we have so little in the books, we have so little information about them that I can try and pick of examples and then extrapolate from that, but it's not an exact art. So if you go to the prologue of book 1, certainly there seems to be one of the others, the one that was dueling with Waymar Royce, who seemed to be slightly different, apparently some sort of a leader or something along those lines, which seems to imply some sort of hierarchy. They're not just automatons, they are different individuals, it would appear. Are we going to have like a Night King character? Possibly. I don't think they're going to do it exactly like they did on the show, have this one character who is like the main antagonist. That was very much something that they needed for the show. They did this across the piece. They had an army that could generally just be sort of massed ranks of people, and they created a sort of understand them a little bit better. You had Grey Worm with the Unsullied, you had Harry Strickland with the Golden Company, you had the Night King with the others, the White Walkers. That was how they did it on the shows. They picked a person as a sort of a figurehead for us to engage with on a slightly more personal level. So I don't think they're going to do it like that. It's entirely possible that because George R. R. Martin did include this story about the Night's King, and he clearly was talking to the showrunners about this, that maybe we will find they do have a leader or a first other or something along those lines. It's very possible, but we have had so little information about them that we cannot say for sure yet. Tobias Gulka. Hi, Tobias. Great to see you. Hey, Robert, do we ever get an indication of how many people actually live north of the wall? Also, recommendation, the First Law trilogy, Logan Ninefingers. Excellent. Thank you for the recommendation. The First Law trilogy, I think I may well have read a long time ago, or at least started on a long time ago. Thank you for the recommendation. I will have a look for it. Do we ever get an indication of how many people actually live? Not exactly. The Mance Raider amasses a huge amount of people. I can't remember if they actually put a specific number on that, but there is no indication that that is everyone north of the wall. The thing about the wildlings is that they're not just one huge mass culture. They're lots of, each village it's a law unto itself, and they get to decide what they do, and some may decide to follow Mance Raider, others may decide not to. So we do not ever get a full sort of number count of the amount of people north of the wall. And I think the short answer is that it's a lot less densely populated than pretty much anywhere in the Seven Kingdoms. So yes, we're talking tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 or so, but they are spread out over a huge space, and there are the closest thing that there was to a wildling town or city was Hardhome, and then that was abandoned for reasons we'll come on to in a moment. But no is the short answer. We do not get a full count, which means, incidentally, that we shouldn't think, okay, so we now know where all the wildlings are. There are some who made it south of the wall. There are some who've gone to Hardhome, but there will be lots of others dotted about all over the place. Joseph Losciavo, just saying thank you for all the great content. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Dynamite229915. Thank you. Didn't see a question attached to that, but thank you very much. Tyler Evan saying, do you think we will learn more about the Grey Waste? Possibly. I mean, I think so. The Grey Waste being beyond 5 forts. No, I think that the further extremes of this world that we have we're presented with, the less likely, particularly further east, the less likely we are to get any greater information about them. North of the wall, yes, we will travel further north of the wall. We'll learn more about north of the wall, but we're never going to get a huge amount of information about it in the same way we do about the Seven Kingdoms, say. Question from the Gaia saying, "Hi Robert, do you think the Dragon White in the show was just a stand-in for the Horn of Winter, or will we potentially still get both in the books?" Well, I will talk about the Horn of Winter in a bit because I do have a question on that specifically, but we have a very clear indication from the showrunners that the Dragon White, Ice Dragon, whatever you want to call it, Viserion, being ridden by the Night King, they made that up. That was their thing for the show. This is very, very clear. That whole Beyond the Wall episode, that was a thing that they did. This was not fed to them by George R. R. Martin. And the reason why was because they wanted something that could bring down the wall. And they've been very clear on this. There's the book Fire Cannot Kill a Dragon. The author is James Hibbard. I was going to say the author's evaded me, but very interesting if you want the background to the show, but also has a few nuggets. I did a video on it a while ago. Has a few nuggets that are very relevant for the books. This is one of them. That they felt they needed something superpowered that could blast a hole in the wall, and they didn't want to just suddenly magically introduce a new thing at that point without having lots of preamble to it. So that's why they decided that they would have a dragon that the others could get hold of. So that was them making it up. That was their invention. So the clear implication of that is that George R. R. Martin is not going to use a dragon. George R. R. Martin has got something else in mind for the others getting south of the wall. You mentioned the Horn of Winter. I will get onto that a little bit later. But there is that whatever way George R. R. Martin had in mind, the showrunners just didn't set it up. The Jack of Hearts saying, "Hi, Robert. Hope you're well." Thank you. I am. How serious do you reckon Tormund Giantsbane is when he goes on about his romantic encounters with giants and bears? A bit, but he's a very boastful character, Tormund Giantsbane. I do like a lot the theory that Tormund Giantsbane was the lover of Maid Mormont. And therefore potentially some of the Mormont children are his children, because he says he slept with bears, so, and the Mormonts on Bear Island. So if you're interested in that theory, I've not done a video on it. I saw Alt-Shift X did a very good video on it, if I remember rightly. So do go and check that one out. So I think we should take some of his things seriously, but he is a show-off and an exaggerator. Or if we're being generous to him, he uses hyperbole a lot in describing his experiences. Adrian Birchall, do I think Roose Bolton is an other? No, I understand why you might think so, given the blue eyes and all the rest of it. But no, I don't think so. Cloaked One for Stewie B. Thank you, Cloaked One, and thank you, Stewie B. Hi, Robert. What are your thoughts on the giants and their role in the story? So the giants are real. Their role in the story is, there are some things which are just, pardon me, just a part of the story, not because they have got their own subplot, but just because this is part of the world. And I see that as what the giants' role is. if you're going at a slightly more literary level, I suspect that we are going to see, like on the show when they made a big deal of one dying, and that's the last of the giants. One of the big themes I suspect at the end of this is that the old things that were there have moved away and passed on. The dragons will be pushed back, the others will be pushed back, and I think also the giants will be at an end, or we know of no more living giants. And so the clear implication is that this is a completely new start for humanity. Lots of the old things have been washed away, and they are sort of a representative of the North and the, not really the sort of the worship of the old gods, but the way that things were before humanity arrived. This is going to be very much the age of humanity, which is following on from all of this, in the same way that J.R.R. Tolkien described the world after the Lord of the Rings. The fourth age was, this was the age of man. The magic and things have been disappearing, and what is left is humanity. That is it's not going to be exactly the same, but that's kind of the feel that we've got going on there. And the absence of giants will be a visual symbol of that. J. Kelsey saying, have you read Accursed Kings? No, I find when the people recommend these things, I always say, there are so many books and things I want to read. No, I have not. I kind of just wanted to ask this to the viewers, so the viewers will hear. George R. R. Martin says it was his main inspiration for A Song of Ice and Fire. Did he? I've not seen that. But I would love to. I will have a look for that as well. So I've got lots of things to be looking for after this. But thank you. I think that might be me caught up in the chat. We had also Totes Black and Leben Langer before we went live, saying the connection to the topic is tenuous, but Jorah gave Dany books about Westeros as a wedding gift. Do you think she still has them? Might Tyrion discover something in them to help against the others? Yes, it's not really related to this, but right at the beginning, as a wedding gift, Jorah, he had some book, I think 3 books, and he gave them to Dany. These were books about Westeros, which she really appreciated because she'd never really been to Westeros. She was born on Dragonstone, but mainland Westeros she'd never set foot on. Everything she knew about it came from what Viserys told her, which is not necessarily the best source of information. Now, we don't really hear about these books pretty much after that, but back when George R. R. Martin was giving us little sly hints about stuff, he was asked about these books and whether Dany had read them, and he said no, Dany hadn't. However, guess who's heading towards Dany right now? Tyrion, and Tyrion does like reading books. And apparently he smirked at that point, but then refused to be drawn on it anymore, which seems to imply that they do have a plot point further forward. Now, what might this be? The clear implication for me is that these have to be this to be important. These have to be books that Tyrion hasn't read, because Tyrion has read a lot of books, and he's spent his time in Castle Rock. He's looked at the books up at the Wall. He's obviously down in King's Landing. He's read a lot of different books, but there are various tomes that we see him thinking about, oh, if only I could get my hands on this, that would be really good. So it's possible that one of the books that we read about as being missing or hard to find is going to be among that collection. Jorah didn't really know that it was, he's not really a particularly reading kind of person, so he wouldn't have known that it was particularly important. What might it be? It's a very long shot, and I've seen Matt J. Magician over on Reddit has theorized on this. Unnatural History by Septon Bath is a book that we're told a couple of times this was his story or understanding of dragons, how they, what they were like, what, how you control dragons, where they came from, the biology, and all the rest of it. And all copies of that were burned by Balor the Blessed, or all copies that they could get hold of. Now, the clear implication has to be that maybe there's another couple of copies knocking around somewhere. If there were copies in Essos that perhaps Balor couldn't get hold of, maybe that Jorah picked up on one from there, that he picked up a copy in Essos. That's entirely possible. If that is the case, then Tyrion, we know Tyrion loves reading books about dragons. He was writing a book about dragons for young Griff. So he would definitely read it if it was there. What might that tell him? Well, I think this is probably more likely to be not about the others, but about how to control dragons. This is a huge theme we've got. Dany does not know how to control her dragons. She has to lock some of them up. Drogon, when she climbs on Drogon and Drogon flies off, she does not know how to control Drogon. He flies into the Dothraki Sea. She does not know how to control him. She thinks, oh, I'm sure that they used to have some magical horns, the Valyrians, that could control dragons. She's trying to figure out how do you control dragons. Tyrion will be the person who has the knowledge, who might be able to help her to ride a dragon, to train a dragon, so to speak, to bond with it. And this makes sense of how she might trust him. It's the same idea as with Bran, of course. Tyrion gave Bran a saddle, and we're always talking about, does this imply that Bran will actually be flying on a dragon? No, perhaps this is actually foreshadowing of the fact that Tyrion is going to design a dragon saddle for Dany. We know that they had different ones back in the day with chains and all the rest of it. Perhaps this is how Tyrion is going to get into Dany's good graces, by designing her a saddle for Drogon. So that's my best guess, it has to be said, of what's going on there. J. Kelsey, 55, thank you very much. Picking up a question from Lauren. Do you think the Winds of Winter will have the Battle of the Bastards in it? Also, a similar plot to season 6 of the show. Yes. I mean, I don't think it's going to go down exactly the same, but where I see the Winds of Winter logically going up to is the point at which in the north the others have reached the wall or possibly breached the wall, and in the south Dany has arrived with the dragons. This thematically seems to be the point at which you can then open up to the final act of this story. We're talking about the Song of Ice and Fire. Finally, after all of this build-up, we have ice and fire at the edges of the Seven Kingdoms. That is the logical place, as far as I'm concerned, for the Winds of Winter to finish. So if you work back from that, are we going to see the Battle of the Bastards? Yes, or the equivalent. I think that we will see the Starks in power in Winterfell, and all the things that have to happen before that. We're going to have the Battle of Ice, Stannis outside Winterfell. Then we're going to have the attack on Winterfell itself, and I think Jon will be a part of that, and I think we're going to have Ramsay being a definite part of that, but it probably won't be specifically the Battle of the Bastards. Question from Cloaked One. Again, Cloaked One, you're being very generous. Thank you so much. This is picking up for Nicholas Toyhala. Apologies, I probably didn't pronounce that very well, but saying, hi, Robert. I'm so glad I finally get to catch one of your live streams as it's going on. Welcome. I'm really glad you have done. Do you think that the Haunted Forest is named so for a reason, not just to sound sinister? Well, I think it's definitely named for a reason. They didn't just think, oh, that's a cool name. It's haunted because people think there are ghosts there. Now, what does that make you think of? It makes you think of the others, because when we do see them, if you get the imagery in the prologue of book 1, they're silent, they're sort of flickering around at the edge of your eyesight, just moving between the trees. That's the feel that we get for the Haunted Forest, and that is, I think, why it's called the Haunted Forest, because the others have been around for a while, but just out of sight. It's only recently that they've started engaging more visibly, and that means that for a long period of time, again, we'll probably get onto this, maybe how long a period of time this is, but they're there, but you don't quite see them. You can sense them, and that is what makes it feel like it's haunted. So that's yeah, I think that's why it is. I think it's not just, I don't think there's actual literal ghosts there, but I think this is, you just catch a glimpse or a hint of the others. Roman Lakovets, thank you very much, saying, speaking of Cold Hands, we know he isn't Benjen, but even after all these years, I haven't heard a plausible theory on who it might be. Could you please help a brother out? Yes, probably. When Bloodraven went north of the wall, he didn't go alone. He went with a couple of his trusted lieutenants. None of them returned. These are people who came with him to the wall. So he had his own bodyguards, probably the wrong way of saying it, but he had a group of people who were there, who fought for him and were fiercely loyal to him. And when he went to the wall, then a group of them, I can't remember exactly how many, my mind says either 50 or 200, I'm sure someone in the chat will remember the exact number, but they all voluntarily went with him up to the wall and joined the Night's Watch at the same time as him. Now, in the short term, the impact of that will have been huge, in that, as we know, the Night's Watch operate actually quite a strong democracy in terms of electing the next leader of the Night's Watch. And if you suddenly load the electorate with people who are fiercely loyal to Bloodraven, that explains how he could arrive up there and relatively shortly afterwards become the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. So he had his loyal sort of lieutenants there. He went north of the wall with them. What happened to them? They did not return. My best guess is that he got hooked up to the Weirwood network, but then the others couldn't. They were loyal to him. They couldn't go back because they might get questioned about where he was and all the rest of it. So he wants them to be there with him and supporting him. Now, they can probably find this is some sort of Children of the Forest magic to get them into this sort of extended half-life that going forward. Why this all makes sense, because of the fact particularly there's one thing that needs. We think Bloodraven did this, but it needed somebody to do the actual work because he's hooked up to a tree. The cache of Dragonglass and probably the Horn of Winter that they find at the Fist of the First Men, that was left there by someone. It was a recently dug area. Ghost goes and finds it, but somebody put it there. It was in a black cloak, which is the cloak of the Night's Watch, which seems to imply left by a member of the Night's Watch, but none of the members who were there. So this, I suspect, was Bloodraven sending one of his lieutenants who have been there operating as his sort of hands and feet on the ground. And that, I think, is who Cold Hands is, because we know that Cold Hands is definitely working for Bloodraven. He is aware when they come Bran and co head north, he meets them and knows that they're on their way. So he's definitely working for Bloodraven. Chaos Ballerina, thank you very much. Again, people are picking up things for other people. I love this. This is it makes for a great community when you get people picking up questions for others. So for Evan Hayes, supposedly there are ice dragons beyond the wall, and they're bigger than most others we know of. What do you know of them? Do you think we'll ever get to see them? Ever see them get involved? Now, I personally, I think this is overblown a bit in some people's minds, in the sense that George R. R. Martin did write a story called The Ice Dragon that some people have speculated might be based in the world of Ice and Fire. He has said actually it wasn't. There are legends of ice dragons, but we haven't heard any of that seems to have any kind of modern day echo yet. I mean, I wouldn't put it past George R. R. Martin to introduce them, but he is very aware that dragons, these are the nuclear weapons of Planetos. If you have a dragon, then it has to have a huge role. Otherwise, you have to get not introduce it at all. The dragons that are coming across with Dany are going to have a huge role. If you had a dragon completely separate to that somewhere in the north, this would add an extra layer of complication. Now, George R. R. Martin is very clearly not averse to adding in extra layers of complication, but I think that as a high level narrative, it confuses it just a little bit too much for my personal liking. I think that he would prefer the ice and fire bits of symbolism to work as clear opposites, not have a kind of middling thing, or yes, this is ice, but also this is not part of the others. I think that would be adding a layer of complication too much. As I say, can't say he's not going to do it, but for my money, probably not. Cloaked One again, thank you so much. For Tomislav Skoff saying, hello, Robert. Do you think that the others have their own civilization in the far north? Yes-ish. So they... what we know, again, we know so little about the others, so we have to just extrapolate from the things that we've seen. We know that they communicate. We know that they have their own language. It's called Scroth. We know that they develop their own tools and weapons, this sort of ice magic. They're crafting things. Their armor definitely is completely different style. They seem to be communicating one with another when we see them there in the prologue. All of this suggests civilization of a sort, certainly a culture of a sort. Now, George R. R. Martin has said a few things that, they don't have a culture per se, but he's saying that they are a different form of life. What I think he often came back to is the idea of the fairy, or the elves of ancient Northern European mythology, who are completely different. They are scary. You do not understand what their motivations are. They are beautiful, but their civilization, such as it is beyond our understanding as humans. So that, I think, is the feel that he is going for with this. When we think of as like a civilization, do they have lots of houses and do they raise farm animals and all that? That's not where they're at. They do have their culture, but it is different to our understanding of what that might look like. George R. R. Martin is calling the others not just as a sort of a meta comment on othering, but also because they are different. They are not human. They are a different kind of life. And I think with that, I am again caught up on the chat. So let's nip back to. Oh, actually, one more. I had one more super chat just before going live. Marvin Martin, thank you so much, saying, "What do you think Bran saw in the heart of winter?" He saw winter is coming. Now, this is the, and I'll get onto it, as I say, I've got the passage I will read. I've got another question about this in a bit, so I'll read the whole segment that we've got there from Bran's visions, his dreams back in book 1. But he sees the heart of winter, and he's very scared. And then Bloodraven effectively says, now you know why you have to, learn to fly. And he says, why? And what did I see? And Bloodraven does say, or Three-Eyed Crow says, winter is coming. So what he saw, when I say winter is coming, what he saw was the others moving south. This was not just a thing, a mysterious threat somewhere way beyond up in the far, far north that we do not know about. It's them actively moving south, heading towards humanity. So that's what he saw. He saw the others on the move. Abby, with the Irish surname that I've decided not to try and pronounce for fear of offending every Irish person. My question is about the land of always winter. George R. R. Martin has said that the land north of the wall is probably as large as Canada. Do you think that the lands of always winter used to be more fertile land? The children of the forest must have had some good land to live on. Did the creation of the others cause the land to become tundra? Well, the creation of the children of the others, which I think, incidentally, this is still our best working hypothesis, is that the children of the forest created the others. That's our, until we get more information, that is our best working hypothesis. Whatever it was, this caused the planet to move out of sync, and so all of the seasons went out of balance. Now, it was the seasons going out of balance that has led to the changing, the changing weather and the changing temperatures will necessarily have had an impact on the geography and what the land itself is like. But it's fair to say this is a globe, and that part to the far north was always going to be cold. I mean, that doesn't mean it's always going to be frozen, but it was always cold. So the areas up there, maybe there was a bit more vegetation, but no, it was always, this is the if you think of it as being like Canada, there are some very nice bits of Canada, but that are in terms of climate. But the further north you go, then the more sort of inhospitable towards the North Pole, the more inhospitable it is, and that is just a function of being a planet. You did ask about whether the children of the forest had some good land. They did, but the children of the forest were across the entirety of Westeros, so they had forests extending across most of the continent. Question from the Jack of Hearts saying, me again, hi there. Could you talk about the Thenns for a bit, their history and culture that sets them apart? In this light, how do you think the marriage between Alice Karstark and Sigorn will work out? So the Thenns, I'd have to do a bit of more research to give you all of the background on the Thenns. The Thenns live up in the valleys in the Frostfang Mountains. They are therefore much more attuned to the harsh weather than some of the wildlings that are down in the Haunted Forest and sort of the nearer to the wall. So how does this match up with the Karstarks? I mean, this is effectively a political marriage as much as anything else. So I don't think that that we're going to see much more. Yes, it's an important point that the wildlings and the northerners can be connected, but this is a figure, a sort of more of a figurehead union than anything else. So I don't think that there's a clear connection between them. It's just we need to have some link across between the two. Nikolai Monson saying, "Hi Robert, love your Song of Ice and Fire and Lord of the Rings videos. Thank you. Why do you think the others are attacking now? I've heard a lot of theories, but nothing too solid." Okay, well, I will pick up on this. I've also got a question from Mega Sandra over on Patreon, which links in with this, and also Julia Erickson over on Patreon. So I shall do all three at the same time, if that's okay. Megasandra says, "Hi Robert, after apparently thousands of years, why are the others heading south now? Is it Jon Snow? What have they been doing up until now?" And Julia Erickson says, "Hi Robert, the White Walkers seem to have been around for a bit less than half a century, since around the time of the tragedy at Summerhall, but also from around the time that Bloodraven disappeared beyond the wall. What do you think of the possibility that it was Bloodraven who made the White Walkers start to move south? If the Weirwood network works in the same way as on the show, where Bran came into contact with the White Walkers through the network, it is possible that Bloodraven himself made a similar mistake." Okay, so why have they started moving south now? Well, I will say up front, I think this is probably the biggest mystery we've got in probably the entire book series. I think we've got a reasonable handle on a lot of the other mysteries, R plus L equals J, and all of those kinds of things about what happened in the Tower of Joy and Robert's Rebellion. I think we haven't got a strong handle on why the others are doing things at all. We've just seen them at the edges of the action. That said, I think we can come up with a few possibilities. So rather than giving you one clear, this is why it is, I'm going to lay out a few possibilities of why they might be moving now. And then I think everyone can try and I think after the Winds of Winter, we will be able to come up with a strong reason. But for now, I think that we just have a raft of options and we have to kind of pick from them. The first one, I think, is it's the boring option, but we have to accept that it's a possibility. It's just that this just happens to be the time. We're reading the story because this is when they returned. Maybe because this is when time echoes around, or whatever. You can come up with some sort of magic-y reason in the world of magic as to why that is. It's not a particularly exciting reason, but it's possible that it's just that's it. Maybe it's when or maybe it's another idea, maybe it's because this is when they've regained the strength to be able to do that. We know that obviously they've been taking Craster's sons. If, as on the show, they take them and then turn them into White Walkers, into others, maybe it's only now that they have grown enough others to form the army that they think they need in order to do it. Maybe before that they hadn't actually found anyone who was voluntarily handing over the children in order to allow them to do that. Something happened with the 13th Lord Commander, but that got nipped in the bud. So maybe this is the first time they've got the strength to do it. Maybe I've heard people argue that maybe this is, as Megasandra said, a reaction to the Azor Ahai reborn, last hero, prince that was promised, Jon Snow. Maybe they realize that things are happening in the south as they see it. They need to react rather than them being the aggressors. It's them seeing that actually, you know what, this person who thousands of years ago almost destroyed us is going to be reborn. We need to be able to defend ourselves. So maybe that is what it is. Maybe it's something like the absence of dragons. Again, it's a very boring, straightforward answer, but they weren't, and when they started moving, dragons weren't around. And although in Westeros, dragons hadn't been around for a while, since the Dance of the Dragons or shortly thereafter, but across the entire Planetos, dragons had been around for thousands of years, and dragons, obviously, with their fire, they are a perfect weapon for destroying the whites. So maybe they were waiting for dragons not to be there, but then didn't realize that they were going to come back again. Or maybe there was an event, which I think perhaps is what Julia Erickson was trying to dig at. I've been, for a long time, I've been trying to see whether there might be a possible link to the tragedy at Summerhall. Now, this is the kind of thing that I recognize we do not have the evidence. So to go any further with this would be tinfoil. But it is notable that George R. R. Martin, in the Tales of Dunk and Egg, he is going to go up to the tragedy at Summerhall. Is that because it's plot important for A Song of Ice and Fire? Possibly. Because what happened there clearly was a huge attempt at fire magic to be rebirthing something, the dragons. And clearly some sort of magic did happen, even if it's only at a meta literary level, that a dragon was born, a dragon was hatched, Rhaegar. And this was part of Bloodraven's long-term plan to be creating the prince that was promised. So maybe something happened there that jarred them into moving. Maybe it's the comets. The time has arrived again. So we have this whole raft of different options of what may have prompted this. I do not think at the moment, and this is why, Nikolai, why, like you've heard a lot of theories, but nothing too solid. George R. R. Martin has not given us enough information to have a solid theory on this, and I try and be open and honest whenever we reach one of those moments, that there are various things which fit the few facts we have right now. Just set them out. There are others as well, but none of them do we yet have enough information to say that's definitely the favorite even. Cloaked One, Max Lurks bought a super chat and it disappeared. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Saying he was asking whether I agree with Joe Magician that the others mistook Waymar Royce for John. Well, this ties in with, well, first of all, this is Joe Magician. He did a video ages ago, and I think he's explained the theory on this channel as well, that in the prologue, what we are looking at is the others hunting somebody who has the description of being like John. Now, Waymar Royce does, in many ways, resemble what you might think John would be, a noble, a member of the Night's Watch. The way he's described, he's comes across as quite first many, perhaps even looking a bit starkish. Then they laugh when his sword breaks once they realize, according to this theory, that this is not a Valyrian steel sword. This ties in with the theory that one of those theories that I talked about in that raft of possible theories, that they are actually responding to the idea that Azor Ahai Reborn, the prince that was promised, has come and they want to try and destroy him. I did not, I have to say, huge amounts of time for Matt. I did not, when reading back through that, I did not see the actions of the others as being the actions of people, as it were, who think they might have discovered the big baddie and then realize that it isn't. Because that would be, if what this theory suggests is true, they are hunting for Jon Snow, who meets this set of criteria. But they find Waymar Royce, who looks like he might be. They test him Turns out he's not. But rather than them being disappointed, what actually happens is that they just laugh and kill him anyway. So I don't think the evidence is there. Personally, I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't think, although there are some parallels, I don't think that the evidence is there myself to say that that's what was going on there. Just double checking I haven't missed any other super chats. Persephone, hi there, saying thanks for a great live stream. I really love this community. This is an amazing community. Thank you so much. J Kelsey 55 saying, of all the kings and queens and pretenders in A Song of Ice and Fire that we have met in the series, who do you think would be the best ruler? I mean, I think that's quite a hard one. I think, well, I can pick the one that George R. R. Martin is wanting us to think about, and this is Fagon. Now, young Griff, he will come across as being a wise and good and sensible leader. It's just he happens not to be who he thinks he is or who he's being presented as. And I think this is very George R. R. Martin, is that we're being presented with this person who he has been trained in all of the things he ought to have been trained in, but he's not the rightful king. Does that matter? That's a very George R. R. Martin thing to be a route to be heading down. Does it matter whether he is? The other people might well be worse but they might have a better claim. So I think him in this story, he is taking on that role. We're clearly meant to see Jaehaerys as being this great and wise leader. I think Jaehaerys I think he clearly did do a lot of excellent stuff. Septon Bath seems to have been excellent help for him. He did a lot of the boring work of starting to be building roads and making sure that there were sewers systems in King's Landing, that kind of thing, which is the boring work of good management of the realm. So he definitely was. I think Aegon V, Egg, certainly started out, as far as I can tell, as being a good leader, but the hints are that he kind of went a bit Targaryen and focused in on hatching dragons in the end of his rule. And question from Cloaked One again. Cloaked One, you're being very generous today. Thank you very much. And this is for Roki Nanti. How old would Varys be at the time of his castration? Maybe the blue flames and the voice was something which appeared simultaneously at Summerhall, which beckoned the others. Well, so Summerhall was 259, and so that will have been 40 odd years before, more than that, before the books, or where we're at in the books at the moment. Varys, we're not really told of his age specifically, but I think but he was a child when that happened, so that would mean that he'd have to be heading towards 50, which is possible. I did do a video on this, and I came to the conclusion that this is one of those things where actually it's not connected to the main plot. This is a bit of backstory, but it's more importantly, this is something that George R. R. Martin is wanting, that is showing the scale and size of his world. That not everything has to be tied in. I'm sure we've all read books where every bit of plot ties in and everything that happened to anybody at any point is all important to what's going on. That can be fascinating and excellent, but it also creates a very small, constrained world. George R. R. Martin is not. He's deliberately not creating a small, constrained world. He wants there to be loose threads. He wants there to be extra bits of information that we read about the Yogos Nai, and we read about the great empires over in Yi Ti. That's fantastic, and they will have some hints about sort of echoes into our current story, but we're not going to go there. We're not going to have links across to the main story of what's happening. He wants this world to seem big, and so I think that the fact that Varys has a backstory, it makes the world larger if his backstory is not directly linked in with the main plot of the story of A Song of Ice and Fire. And question from Mary Laura Newman. Thank you. Best ruler, Queen Alison. Yes, actually. I think, I mean, I only didn't really include her because I was asked about pretenders and rulers. She sort of co-ruled with King Jaehaerys and brought in some specific rules and laws which were useful. They're getting rid of, I say useful, progressive, enlightened, good, getting rid of the Lord's right to the first night, giving extra legal rights for widows, that kind of thing. So she actually had a very positive influence. Now, if she'd been technically the ruler, the monarch herself, would she have been great? Quite possibly. I think that she showed huge strength and ability in diplomacy. The bit of the story that we got in Fire and Blood, when she goes off on this northern tour, while Jaehaerys is having to sort of stay at home and do business, and so she heads up to Winterfell and to the Night's Watch. She does seem to do an excellent job there of making people care about her, and in the north that was quite an uphill struggle. Question from Natalie Donald. This is linking in with something I had a question a bit earlier, and I said I was going to talk a bit more. What do you think the heart of winter is, and do you think there is a fire equivalent? Okay, so I will read what we have about. This is just a short section about what the heart of winter is. This is Bran's visions in book 1, when dreams when he's unconscious, and the three-eyed crow comes to him and shows him the world, and he sees what's happening elsewhere in Westeros. He goes over to Essos, and then we read this. He looked past the wall, past endless forests cloaked in snow, past the frozen shore and the great blue-white rivers of ice and the dead plains where nothing grew or lived. North and north and north he looked, to the curtain of light at the end of the world. And then beyond that curtain, he looked deep into the heart of winter. And then he cried out, afraid, and the heat of his tears burned on his cheeks. Now you know, the crow whispered as it sat on his shoulder. Now you know why you must live. Why? Bran said, not understanding. Falling. Because winter is coming. So this ties in with what I was saying earlier about what did he see? He saw winter is coming. He saw that the threat was there. So that's what he saw in the heart of winter. In terms of what it is, it has to be, I think, I think the question earlier suggested Stronghold. That probably is not, for me, the right word. I do, and this is tinfoil, but the others have magical powers that seem to be a kind of perverted or undead version of the warging powers, the greenseer powers that we see in people like Bran. So Bran, for example, he can warg into humans and animals, and he can make them do what he wants. The others can warg into dead humans and animals and make them do what they want. So is there a... And that seems to have been on the show, certainly, when you get that linking thing across with the Night King and Bran, they seem to be operating on the same spiritual, magical plane, as it were. That, I think, again, it's not going to be exact, but that, I think, has to be something that George R. R. Martin transmitted, that there is a link across between these two types of magic. So what might the Heart of Winter be? Well, if this is a sort of a strange, perverted form of the magic of Greenseers, which has its heart as being the Weirwood network, maybe the Heart of Winter is some sort of strange, perverted version of Weirwood hub. We've already seen a sort of version of that over at the Shade of the Evening Trees over in Essos, which again provides some sort of a strange, perverted version of, or twisted version of the Weirwood network. So I think for me, it is tinfoil, because we simply do not know. That was the one thing I read out is the only time that phrase, the Heart of Winter, is mentioned at all in any of A Song of Ice and Fire, and we're not told anything more than that. So any speculation is necessarily tinfoil. But for me, that the idea does that this is some sort of hub of a twisted version of the Weirwood network makes some kind of sense, not just well, here's where all their houses are. Question from Mark Sutton. What did you make of Silverwing refusing to fly beyond the wall? And what does this potentially mean for Dany when she eventually comes to Westeros? Yeah, so I've got a question. I think I had a question. I think it was Mara Lee, actually. Mara, if you're watching, who asked a very similar question. So this was when Queen Alysanne goes to the north. She goes up to Castle Black. And she meets the Night's Watch and stays there for a little while. And a few times she gets on Silverwing, her dragon, and just sort of tries to fly north of the wall. But Silverwing does not want to go. Mara, I think in your question you were asking, is this because of the cold that they don't like, or is it some kind of others magic? I think it's the magic of the wall. I think it's that, and again, we don't have the information, but the wall seems to be a magical barrier. It seems to prevent magic things passing by one way or the other. We have, when Jon is on one side of the wall, Ghost is on another, then they seem to, there's a disconnect between them. So that seems to be, and it makes sense that if this is a barrier that you cannot, that the others cannot move through, that this is something which stops. And so I think that the Silverwing did not cross north because of this magical barrier that was preventing it from going north. So that's my feel on that. In terms of Dany, I suspect that this is not going to make a big difference, because we've already gone through the fact that the idea of the Beyond the Wall episode on the TV show, where the dragons went north of the wall, that was created by the showrunners. That wasn't a George R. R. Martin thing. They're not going to capture a dragon. The dragon capture was in order for them to have a thing to destroy the wall. And I think there's a fairly good chance that Dany will not go north of the wall at all. I think that the others will breach the wall in whatever way. They will come south of it. And when she engages with them, as she will, they will have moved south, and actually going to the wall is not really an issue. But if she does, I think that all of the hints we have with the wall is that this is a magical barrier that goes between 2 points, and you can go around it. So I think that if she does have to, then she can just sort of go around the wall. Question from Sylvester Snow. saying, hello, Robert. What do you think the reason was for the destruction of Hardhome? Was it the others or some other magical force? And Whitney also says, hi, Robert. I will most likely miss this stream as I'm under the weather. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you're feeling better soon. My question is in regards to Hardhome. Do you think the Valyrians had a hand in its destruction 600 years ago? It is said to have burned with flames so high and hot that Night's Watchman thought the sun was rising in the north. Also, could there be a blood connection between the Starks and the others? Thanks again. Well, on that last bit, yes, as I've already said, it makes absolute sense that there is a blood connection between the Starks and the others. But in terms of Hardhome, now we don't have huge amounts again on this, but I will read the section that we do have because Hardhome, and it's intriguing. And I think that there's an explanation. I think that you're sort of you're almost there on this one. So the Hardhome was the closest thing there was to a city, a large town for the wildlings, and it was reasonably civilized. They certainly had internal laws that were going on there. A maester went up and lived there for a while, so we have some information in the world of Ice and Fire. And then we read this. One night, 600 years ago, Hardhome was destroyed. Something terrible happened that night. The details are uncertain. Its people are said to have been carried off into slavery by slavers from across the narrow sea, or slaughtered for meat by cannibals out of Skagos. The homes of the inhabitants of Hardhome were said to have burned with flames so high and hot that the watchers on the wall far to the south thought that the sun was rising from the north. After down on the haunted forest and the shivering sea alight for almost half a year. Traders and a ship sent by the Night's Watch to investigate reported only nightmarish devastation where our Hardhome had stood, a landscape of charred trees and burned bones, waters choked with swollen corpses, and blood-chilling shrieks echoing from the cave mouths that pock the great cliff that looms above the settlement. So that is what we know. It was there, something happened, and then it's been abandoned ever since. So the something that happened, we have two big clues, it has to be said. The first one is that we read that people were taken away. Now, exactly what that does seem to vary. There are different reports. Maybe it was slavers who took them away. Maybe it was people from Skagos. But in any event, the people who lived in Hardhome were taken away. So that's the first thing. There are enough different stories of that for us to know people were taken away. The second thing is there was burning, a big, big fire burning. Now, afterwards, there was charred bodies. There was trees which have been burnt to the ground. Ash falling from the sky for months afterwards. This is something big and fiery happened. Now, you will get a lot of, if you go hunting for this, you will get lots of different theories. Maybe this was a dry run for the destruction of Valyria, the doom of Valyria. I like the idea of that, but then you have to say, well, then why did it take them so long to do it afterwards? Because this was 600 years ago, so 200 years before the doom of Valyria. That's an awful long. 2 centuries is an awful long time to wait between your practice and actually doing it. So I don't think it was that. Maybe this was some sort of volcanic thing just that happened. It's possible, but we don't hear about there being any sort of volcanic activity under there. And that doesn't seem to explain the slavers or whatever it was, people being taken away from there. The best solution to this that I have heard is when, and Whitney, you picked up on this about the Valyrians. And the best solution, and it's an article on Reddit, I've forgotten who wrote it, do feel free to go and check for it. But this pointed out the point at history that we're in is the Valyrian freehold is at its height, and yet there is one city that is really kind of thumbing its nose at it. This is Braavos. Braavos, founded by slaves from the Valyrian freehold, who rebelled. They found what the place that was to become Braavos, and it became the secret city. It was growing in fame, it was growing in riches, and yet it remained secret. And it was deliberately setting itself up as being opposed to the Valyrian freehold. The first law of Braavos, no slavery. The Valyrian freehold was based on slavery. So it makes sense that the Valyrians would be looking for Braavos. And what clues do they have for where Braavos might be? Well, I guess if they checked shipping lines, then they could probably figure out that it was somewhere to the north of the Narrow Sea. They couldn't find Braavos itself, which was hidden. The lagoon is hidden behind high cliffs and pine trees on the top, and mists, which means that you could fly over it and not see it. So they will be thinking, well, where is Braavos? Then perhaps they learn of a relatively new settlement with people who call themselves free folk. I could imagine that they might think maybe that is Braavos. Now, that does fit in with what you would expect that the Valyrians would do if they thought that they discovered Braavos. First of all, they would go and reclaim their slaves. That's what they would immediately go in, and that fits in with what we hear, is that the people were taken out. Secondly, they would then burn it to the ground with dragons. So that makes sense of both of the main clues that we have. We do not know. We don't hear about this at all. Maybe the Valyrians didn't advertise the fact, because then they might have immediately afterwards discovered that clearly they got it wrong, because Braavos was still there doing things secretly hidden away somewhere. So that is the theory that best fits the facts. If so, this is another bit of foreshadowing of what happens when dragons destroy a city. And we got it even on the show. Dragon was destroying a city, the ash falling from the sky afterwards. That is the image that we get from Hardhome. So it makes sense. We don't have the information. There's nothing there that says it's definitely that. But out of all of the theories I've seen for Hardhome, that's the one that seems to work most for me. Lady Dane, in the books, there are abandoned villages beyond the wall. What level of development do you think these villages had? Why have a village if your lifestyle does not include some agriculture? Were these villages abandoned long before the present timeline? So the abandoned villages that we read about in the books, mostly in Clash of Kings, when the Great Ranging heads northwards, they come across a number of abandoned villages. Now, we might think of them more as hamlets rather than villages. We read about one called White Tree, where you get the white tree in the middle, the weirwood. Around it were 4 buildings and a sheep pen. And that seems to be counted as a village. So these aren't large areas. These are small hamlet-sized places. I would agree completely. If you've got a culture that settles down, then that implies that there must be some degree of using the land around you. And indeed, we do get some references to sort of corn and bread and things like that, which seem to imply that there is some degree of settling and using and tilling the land. Having a sheepfold obviously implies that they're settling down and using some sort of animal husbandry going on. So there is sort of a rudimentary settled society in these villages dotted throughout the haunted forest and the environs. Now, that said, what we're told implies that this is not hugely developed. They seem to be quite dry stone walling so they don't seem to have any kind of like cement or any equivalent thereof. And if we think of cement as being just a modern thing, the Romans had the equivalent of cement as well in our world. So this is a very ancient thing of how do you actually get your different rocks to stay together. So, and the roof was in need of repair and lots of other things. So this was not particularly developed, but there was an element for some of the wildlings that they were settling down and creating small farming communities. Shetland Apache, thank you so much, saying, is there book evidence that the White Walkers were created and didn't just evolve like the myriad other humanoid races in A Song of Ice and Fire? Well, we have very, very little evidence about them at all. We have George R. R. Martin, not book, but on record, saying that they are a different kind of life. And they weren't one of the original. This is in the books. They weren't one of the original inhabitants that we're told about for Westeros, being the children of the forest and the giants. So there's no record of them in the Dawn days. Now, that doesn't mean that they weren't there. They might have been hiding away. They could have developed in the far north, but it sort of implies that they weren't there before. We also have the fact that there definitely was some magical event that has to have an explanation. We're told this was on the back cover blurb for the very first edition of the first book. George R. R. Martin will have cleared this, that the seasons are out of balance because of a preternatural magical event. That is one of the things that we will discover. What was that? It was clearly absolutely plot important, and it makes sense that they are that the creation of a new species would be the kind of thing that would require huge amounts of magic. And there's also the other element to this is, if you were to create a race to be a weapon against humans, then you would probably create something like the others. You would create someone that is immune to the weapons that humans use, which they are, stronger than humans, and can use humans' numbers against them. When a human is killed, they can be raised up and then switched to the other side. So it works that way. And then the inverse of it works, that if you were the children of the forest creating this hugely impressive weapon for use against humans, then you want to have some fail-safe. So, hey, why didn't you make them incredibly vulnerable to what you use as weapons? Dragonglass. So it ties in. We do not have, there's no killer sentence anywhere in the books that says that this is definitely what happened, but it makes sense. And so that is what I think I said early on in this stream. That is our best working assumption going forward. There may be something else. We may get more information in the Winds of Winter, which allows us to think of something else, but it's the thing that currently best fits the facts as a hypothesis. Gabriel Farrell. Hi, Robert. Hope all is well. It is, thank you. If, as you've suggested, the Horn of Winter is not to do with taking down the wall, but rather to wake the Stark dead or their statues in Winterfell, how do you think the others will bring it down and pass south into Westeros? I think this is an excellent question. So I'm sure you've seen my videos suggesting, and I'm not going to go through all of the evidence, but suggesting that the Horn of Winter is about raising up the Stark dead or the statues under Winterfell in the crypts. I think there's a lot of evidence for that. Not least, just to pick one random thing, we do get the story that it was blown once before, the Horn of Winter. We do not get a report that the wall came down. We do get a report that giants were raised from the earth. So that seems to be what happens when you blow the Horn of Winter. Now, I will put the flip side of this time, because I think it's important to see both sides. The flip side is that there does, as was sort of hinted at a bit ago, answering a different question, there does have to be a way for the others to get south. And that, by implication, has to be connected with something that George R. R. Martin has already introduced in the story. And the favourite has to be the Horn of Winter, for the reason that that's the thing that people think brings down the wall. It seems an odd thing to have as a weapon against the others, something which brings down the barrier that keeps the others out. But yeah, that's what a legend suggests, that it does bring down the wall. So if it's not that, what else might do it? I think there are, well, my observation is that the wall is not the most secure defense against anyone, really. You can think immediately of 4 or 5 different ways of getting past the wall if you wanted to. The wildlings climb over it all the time, for example. There are allegedly caverns and tunnels underneath it that will allow you to get past it. There's a way, we get told at Eastwatch, then the Night's Watch trade with the wildlings north of the wall. They literally get in a boat and move and just sail around the wall and then land again. At the other side, then it ends at a river and a great canyon. Wildlings just walk along the bottom of the canyon and get through that way. We've also got the Black Gate, which is really cool. We'll talk about that in a moment, but is also not particularly effective at stopping Night's Watch people getting through. Sam gives the code answer to get through, and then just says, "Everyone else, come through." That seems all it is. It allows other people to get through. So, if I had to guess at the moment, then the Black Gate is a very obvious possible way of getting through. Another one is some sort of version of what we saw on the show, where you have a connection between the others and Bran. That was between the Night King and Bran. That allowed the others to get into Bloodraven's cave by getting past what he has is a sort of he has it in the books as well, a sort of a protective circle around Bloodraven's cave. And if the way through that is by Bran making a connection with the others, then maybe he, as we speculated on the show, maybe him going south of the wall allows them to come through as well. There are a number of different ways that this might happen. So the Horn of Winter is possible. It is possible, but and also because these things are legend, it's entirely possible there's 2 horns there. George R. R. Martin's got lots of different horns. Maybe one of them does bring down the wall, but maybe another one does bring up the statues from the Winterfell crypts. There are lots of different possibilities. As it stands, my favourite is the Black Gate, simply because it clearly is created as a magical way to get through the wall, and doesn't seem quite as secure as you might first think. Question from Kelly Johnson. Robert, wouldn't the wargs have given trouble to the dragons at Hardhome? Possibly. We've not seen wargs and dragons, I assume what you're suggesting is that the wargs would then warg into skin changers, would warg into dragons and take control of them. We simply, although that works well in theory, we simply have not got any examples of when this has happened, particularly if a dragon has got a bond already with somebody. Is that like, and we've not really seen it. We've seen a bit with Dany and Drogon, but we've not really seen it, what that means magically. Does that mean then that somebody else can't come in like a skin changer? That's entirely possible. So we have not seen that connection of magical or clash of magical powers before. So we do not know. It's a nice idea, but even so, if they're having fire breathed down on them, perhaps they might not be in the best position to be defending themselves. And even if they did, then I suspect that that's the kind of thing that would make the Dragon Riders even angrier and burn it even more in the way that we saw. Luke DeRay Walker, thank you so much, saying, I've never catched you live. I love your content and hope you will keep it up. Thank you. Greetings from Germany. Well, thank you very much, Germany. It's getting quite late for you over there, but I'm so glad you managed to catch me live. John Martin just saying, thanks, Robert. Thank you, John. I really appreciate that. And AK Channel TV, if there is no Night King in the book, how will we know if Jon or Dany are the prince who was promised without that kill? Here's to all the rest of it. I don't, well, to all the rest of it, I think the prince that was promised, Azor Ahai Reborn, Last Hero, we are going to be debating who exactly that was well beyond the end of these books. That's George R. R. Martin is not writing a prophecy which will come true in very specific and clear terms. That's not how he tends to operate. It's not like Lord of the Rings, where you get very clear prophecies that you can see what's going on, or even like Harry Potter. It was just, this has to happen. That's not what George R. R. Martin's interested in. He's interested in how people interpret it and what they then do as a result of it, rather than anything else. You will find that Jon and Dany and Tyrion and half a dozen other characters will all have elements to their character and storyline that will allow us to go, they feel a bit like the prince that was promised. That was quite Azor Ahai. Already we've had Jon's had a dream where he's there as standing as Azor Ahai. Similarly, we've had Dany with a dream when she's going on a dragon and attacking the others. And this is, both of them could be, and both of them seem to have champions who think that they are. And we're not going to end up at the point of going, actually, it's that one, not that one. We will end up at a point where we go, okay, well, maybe that made more sense than that, but we're not going to get a full answer. And I had one more question, I think. Oh, Mark Adams, no, super sticker. Thank you very much indeed for that. Question from, this is going back to my patron questions. Although, actually, I'll take a moment just to pause and say, if you are in the live chat, could you just show a bit of love to the moderators? I have got some amazing and fantastic moderators who do a wonderful job. So thank you so much. If you could just give them a little bit of a round of applause or something, that would be much appreciated. Lawnduck20 over on Patreon saying, hello, Robert. First and foremost, I want to give you mad respect for doing a 4-hour marathon last live stream. I did go on for 4 hours. Didn't realize when I started it was going to go on quite that long. Well, we've done half of that already, and I'm probably not going to get to 4 hours again today. It was quite epic. I have a couple of questions, but feel free to only answer what you have time for. My question is on some of the Lost Rangers. Do you think we will ever see Benjen Stark or Alistair Thorne again? So Benjen Stark I've already mentioned. I think we will. Alistair Thorne, I had to have a think about, but I went back to so John has sent him north of the wall, and his parting words, I noted them down because basically John is daring him to refuse to do this, and Alistair Thorne's just there going, I'm not going to fall into that trap because you'll just kill me, your Lord Commander. But then he says, you'd best pray that it's a wildling blade that kills me north of the wall. The ones the others kill don't stay dead, and they remember. I'm coming back, Lord Snow. I think that is very strong foreshadowing that Alistair Thorne we will see again, but we're going to see him as a white coming back. He's said that's what he's going to do, and I think we will see it. So Alistair Thorne, yes, he is going to be coming back. Kerry Johnson, will John end up with Val after killing Dany? I don't personally think so. I mean, I think he will kill Dany. I don't think that his story is not a happily ever after kind of story. His story is echoing the Frodo story, where he, and this ties in with my next question, my patrons, which I love it when this happens, but his story is kind of the Frodo story of he's going to do all of the hard work, he's going to get there, and his contribution is going to be the vital contribution in saving the planet for humans, but he is going to be broken by what he had to do. He is not going to be the same person, and he's not going to be able to enjoy this world that he saved. And Frodo, as a result, Frodo sailed west. John is going to travel north. I don't think he's going to fall in love with Val or anyone else. I don't think he's going to get together with Val or anyone else. I think he's going to he'll probably go north with the wildlings, but it's very much this figure of this broken, beaten person heading north of the wall just to get away. And Lawnduck20, or James Parham, thank you very much, just saying, great job. Lawnduck20 saying, we hear the howls of direwolves north of the wall, but have never seen them. So do you think any of them will make an appearance? And if they do, will they be alive and well, or dead and fighting for the others? So this links in with the John's ending thing, because it gives me another opportunity, if you've not heard it, to hear one of my current favorite theories for the end of A Song of Ice and Fire. The hat tip here goes to Bookshelf Stud, who has been on this channel before and is an excellent member of this Song of Ice and Fire community. This is about the final scene of A Song of Ice and Fire. Now, the theory starts with an observation from when the graphic novel for Book One, A Game of Thrones, was produced. The artist, the writer of that, obviously he had to talk to George R.R. Martin, because in a graphic novel you can only convey certain bits of dialogue, certain bits of story. You have to cut out quite a lot, particularly on a big book like Game of Thrones. And so the guy who did that was asked, you did your best job to try and just get the core bits of the story, but is there anything else that George R. R. Martin specifically said to you, actually, could you definitely include this in? And the writer, he didn't say what it was for obvious reasons, but he said, well, there was one scene which you wouldn't think it was important. You wouldn't, and I didn't think it was important, so I didn't include it in my first draft. But George R. R. Martin said, actually, could you include that scene? Could you include this line of dialogue from that scene? Because it will echo to the very last scene of A Song of Ice and Fire. Now, that obviously then sends people who are so minded, like Bookshelf Stud, to go through and have a look in the graphic novel. What might this scene that you think shouldn't be included because it's not very plot important, but is included with a line of dialogue that perhaps could hark forward to the very last scene of A Song of Ice and Fire. And he thinks he's found it, and I agree with him. It's in the part early on in the book when Jon is at Winterfell, Benjen is there, and there's this feast for Robert Baratheon, and Benjen and Jon talk, and Benjen sees Ghost there, and Benjen says, "We hear the direwolves sometimes north of the wall howling," and there's 2 or 3 pages of this graphic novel given over to that one scene with that one bit of dialogue in there. And that seems like an odd thing if you've got a very slimline graphic novel, quite an odd scene to include unless it had some point of reference. And if this is the point of reference echoing across to the last scene of the books, that makes sense when you then think, what was the last scene of the TV show, which they'd obviously had information from George R. R. Martin about from the books. The last scene there is Jon heading north from the wall and just going north. And this would be, I think, an excellent way to round off the story. As they head north, you hear the direwolves howling north of the wall. And I do wonder whether Ghost, who's remained silent through this, calls back. That, I think, would be an excellent way to finish off the story. I had a question in chat. I think I did. I might have missed it. Katie Smith, thank you very much. I know there are a lot of places you can cross the water secretly, but I was wondering if you just wanted to go beyond the wall, would the Night's Watch allow it? Well, very few members of the public go to the wall. So would they allow it? I mean, I think if Tyrion had said, I want to just go out beyond the wall to have a look around, then maybe Gerald Mormont would have allowed him. But generally, no. I think, why would you? I mentioned earlier that a maester did go beyond the wall to Hardhome back in the day. The implication is that that was by boat. So you can get beyond the wall, but the bigger question is, why would you want to? Would they allow you to? Possibly, but if you had a good reason for it. But as it stands at the moment, the Night's Watch are so low on numbers that they probably couldn't really stop you if you wanted to. So Sam managed to get the Night Fort completely abandoned. Sam managed to get through there without, you didn't even have to ask anybody. Okay, so question from Howland's little sister. We were talking about the Black Gate a little bit ago. The Black Gate is unique and very mysterious. What are your thoughts about its creation and ultimate purpose? Did Bran the Builder create it, or was it the Children of the Forest? What do you see George R. R. Martin doing with this important but forgotten asset that would help them with the battle against the others? So the Black Gate is a way through the wall. It is at the Night Fort, which is the historical center of the Night's Watch. They moved to Castle Black much later, and for most of the time, the Night Fort was their main base. It's found in the kitchens of the Night Fort, down a well, partway down a well, and then it's sort of in the wall. And they didn't show this. They sort of showed them going through on the TV show, but in the book, it's this really cool door, which is a face. It's made out of weirwood. It effectively asks for the password, and the password is reciting a part of the Night's Watch vow. And if you do that successfully, then the mouth opens and you can go through. Really cool. and it would appear really ancient. Now, the fact that it is down low does not, I think, imply that it is supposed to be hidden from the members of the Night's Watch, or it's only people in the kitchens who know about it. I think it's because if you're thinking about going through ancient history, and this is the wall has been around for thousands of years, then actually that will be lower down, and so everything land has sort of moved up. If you're thinking about sort of archaeology, then you sort of dig down to find things, and so the level has changed. So I think this is just George R. R. Martin nodding to the fact that the levels have changed, and so that was probably at normal level when the wall started. Now, what role is this going to play? Well, I think this is a way for people to get through very clearly. The bit that we do not know about is what I sort of hinted at earlier, is what are the actual rules here? Sam seems to be able to say it and then usher people through. Did he have to be a member of the Night's Watch himself? Or could anyone have said the password and then go through? We do not know that. We also do not know whether this is creating a magical hole in the barrier that is allowing people to go through. If anywhere does, it's there. And it makes sense that you may have wanted to have a magical hole in there. This perhaps is the way that we're going to see characters like Benjen or Cold Hands start to re-engage, and if they are going to get down through the wall, then that is certainly the way they're going to do that. So what is it going to be used for? I think George R. R. Martin has set it up in such a way that he could use it in a number of different options. It may also be a possible way for, I think John might, I'll get onto this another time, but John may end up in Ghost, be in the Night Fort, and if the entrance opens up, perhaps he can even go through as Ghost. That would be amazingly cool, and he could go north of the wall. But that's, as I say, that's me heading off into flights of fancy. What role will this play? This is the weak point in the wall. We will see people come through it. Maybe Bran's going to come back this way. Maybe we're going to get one of the characters that we know north of the wall, the kind of the Benjamins, the Coal Hands, will come back this way. Maybe even the others may see whether that is a gap in the magic of the wall. It's one of a number of different options. Cloaked One, thank you for picking up the question from, and Cloaked One, you're being very generous today. Thank you. Daniel Al-Sadek. Hi, Robert. I love your videos. Thank you. I'm in the middle of the Lord of the Rings series and looking forward to starting a Song of Ice and Fire videos. Have you ever considered making ones for the Discworld series? I mean, I've considered it. I do love Discworld. Terry Pratchett's story is fantastic. I don't think it's likely certainly in the near future. There's a lot coming up. I've got limited time, and I have to work out where to put this. We've got a lot of amazing books, TV shows coming out. They haven't, in my view, made a great adaptation yet of the Discworld. A few of the standalone things, if in the UK, the ones they did on Sky, I thought they were pretty good, but they haven't done anything huge budget that quite captures the spirit of it yet. If they ever do, then yeah, I probably would cover them, but we're not there yet, and I've got a lot of other things that I definitely do want to be covering. Sebastian Holden. Hi, Robert. Could John live forever after his resurrection? Can you please say, googly, woogly, woogly, googly, my day has been made. Thank you. I'm glad to be able to please you by saying googly, woogly, woogly, googly. So, could John live forever after his resurrection? I don't think so. So his resurrection is, as I say, I think that it's more returning his soul / spirit to his body. So I think he's going to go into Ghost, and then he's going to get called back into his own body. That is not going to make him immortal. That's just going to, and his body, because his body will still be the same body, it will have been frozen and then warmed back up again, and then he will re-enter it and then be able to do stuff. So I don't think, it's not that he's sort of gone away and then come back and become a sort of a wight of some description. This is him doing a completely different thing that we've not seen so far in the stories. Ellen, thank you for the super sticker. Just saying, Ellen, Ellen's super sticker saying thank you. So thank you, Ellen. Adrian Birchall saying, I think the Nightfort is the most important of the wall castles. Do you? Yes, I do. Historically, they may well be. I mean, certainly Castle Black has played a bigger role in the stories that we've got, but in terms of historically, yes. Mara Lee saying, if we are lucky enough to... Hi there, Mara. If we are lucky to get John Ghost POV chapter in the Winds of Winter, what do you think John or Ghost will be doing? I would love it if John or Ghost could range beyond the wall to find out what happened to Uncle Benjen. Hugs to you and Dan the dog. So this is one of the things that I most want for the opening chapters of the Winds of Winter, is a chapter of John in Ghost. I do not know whether we're going to get it. I suspect that George R. R. Martin won't be able to resist doing it. But so I've got reasonably high hopes that it's going to happen, but can't be guaranteed. What will Ghost do with John in Ghost? Now, I was talking about a bookshelf study. It may well have been the same conversation I had with him. We were talking about the Nightfort. I had him on here a long time ago, 18 months or more ago. We were talking about the Nightfort, and we sort of came up with a theory together that the Nightfort has got lots of these stories associated with it about this murder and death and people lurking in the shadows and all of the horrible stuff that Bran and co, with their stories that they got from Old Nan, were telling while they were in the Nightfort. That could be foreshadowing for something happening in the Winds of Winter. If John does walk into Ghost, as we think, what's Ghost going to do? Well, probably hunt down the people who killed John. Now, what are the people who killed John? This is a handful of members of the Night's Watch. Are they going to be able to stay in Castle Black after that? Probably not. They're in the minority, the people who are against John. It has to be said, there are lots of the wildlings viewed him as their leader. There were lots of members of the Night's Watch who viewed him as their leader, and certainly Melisandre and Stannis' soldiers. They may not have always agreed with John, but they recognized him as the rightful Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. So the people who did kill John probably will want to escape somewhere. Where do they go? Well, we've already had members of the Night's Watch going out, starting to repair some of the old castles. So it would make sense for them to go to one of the other castles on the wall, maybe even the Nightfort, which leads to this wonderfully kind of gothic horror image of the Nightfort, which is this huge, sprawling, dark, menacing place with a handful of people there who had been killing, who between them had killed John, being hunted and preyed upon by Ghost, John in Ghost. It's very dark, but this is exactly the kind of thing that we might expect to see from Ghost. Otherwise, what else would Ghost be doing? Just wandering around with John in? No, we're going to see the wolfish side of John, because John is going to be linked and becoming more wolfish while he's in Ghost. Eric Fogg, what do you make of Lord Commander Mormont's disastrous decision making on the Great Ranging, particularly in seeking the Battle of Free Folk at the Fist? and instead getting the whites. It seemed suicidal to battle an enormous host rather than return to the wall and use his full force, and the defense is there. Well, clearly, yes, it was with hindsight a bad decision, but I think this tells us a lot about the thinking of J.R. Mormont, and also probably what Benjamin's thinking was, is that he went out. So the Great Ranging had a few different objectives. They wanted to know where they were hunting for Benjen and Waymar Royce, what happened to them, wanted to know what was going on with the wildlings. They wanted to know what was happening with the others. And they did not, at that point, have all the answers. They got as far as the Fist of the First Men, and there was clearly something going on. John had discovered the cache of Dragonglass and the Horn of Winter. They've discovered that Mance Rayder is amassing the wildlings in one place. They know that the others are there on the move, but they don't know everything that's going on. Now, J.R. Mormont could have said, okay, I'm just not going to find it all. I'm going to head away back down to the wall. Clearly, whatever's going on, we'll need to defend ourselves. That would have been a rational move, but that doesn't seem to have been what he was like. He felt that his role was to understand what the threat was so that he could then communicate it back, rather than what he had previously been doing, is just sending back these kind of like, we think there's stuff wrong. He wanted some evidence. He needed to know what was going on. So he sent out some bands of rangers out to do the investigating. This is where John gets sent out to find out what's going on with the wildlings and the other things that they're hunting, information about the others. He sends them out, and he thinks, well, where is the best place in the north to defend ourselves while we're waiting for this information to come back? The Fist of the First Men probably was the most defendable point that they could find around that sort of area. So it made sense. It was not, in hindsight, it was not a good idea. And I think they would have known that if any army had started coming at them, then they would be in a pretty poor situation. But if you were committed to finding out information and not going home until you knew what was going on, then that was probably the best place for you to be. Jewel Elson, thank you so much for the super sticker. Somebody jumping up and saying yippee. Thank you very much. These super stickers always confuse me, but that's excellent. Eminon Fox just in the chat saying, what's your take on the underground tunnels and rivers, e.g. Gorn's Way, that go under the wall and the river connected to the cave of the Three-Eyed Raven? Yeah, so there are the Gorn's Way is allegedly this a route under the wall. There is a river. It would appear in the Three-Eyed Raven's cave. Perhaps this is the way that Bran is going to work his way out. I suspect that they, rather than sort of going overground, a lot of the way Bran heads back down south will be underground. And this all ties in with the idea that whereas we think of Westeros on top, so what's above ground, it's hollow. A lot of Westeros is hollow with cave systems going all over the place. So George R. R. Martin is going to show us some more of the caves at some point, because he's flagged them up so many times. Dwight the Merchant. Hi, Robert. Given that the wall was likely not originally built anywhere near as big as it is today and was more a magical rather than a physical barrier, I'm wondering if you think the magical barrier of the wall continues along the gorge on its western end, or if it's simply a physical barrier at that point. Thanks for all your insights and helping keep me sane through yet another lockdown spring here in Nova Scotia. I'm sorry if you're still lockdown spring sounds horrible, but hello to Nova Scotia. So the wall comes to an end. We know what the wall is like coming to an end at Eastwatch. It goes up to the sea and then just stops. At the other end, there's a gorge at the bottom of which is a river, and that's where the wall stops. Now, that's not where the sea is. The sea is further away. Given the effort it takes to make the wall, this seems like an odd decision to stop it there, unless you can be pretty certain that there's another barrier over there preventing whatever it is going, which leads to the clear implication that it's not just the magical barrier of the wall, but it's something to do with the water at either end, because at both ends of the wall it stops at water, running water in some way. And so this seems to be a hint that the others cannot cross running water, or otherwise the wall is ridiculous, because you can just get in a boat and just sail around it, go half a mile, and that's all you need to do. So clearly the implication is that the others cannot pass through running water, which makes a lot of sense in terms of echoes of stories of like the undead that cannot cross running water. That's the kind of thing George R. R. Martin will want to echo in his own story, and also make sense of the observation that I say at many live streams, the fact that there are the important places connected with the first long night or the children of the forest seem to be inside on islands, so surrounded by water, like the Isle of Faces, like Dragonstone, where there's the Dragonglass mine, like Starfall, where that's where the Sword of the Morning and the Sword Dawn rests. Islands surrounded by water. Why is that important? Because the others can't get at them. So these things that are important, the others can't get to. So that, I think, is the implication. The gorge, obviously, over thousands of years, it may well have been a river, but then it has just sort of sunk down even further into a gorge. Nicola Tricola saying hi. I was hoping you could share your theories on how Craster made a deal with the White Walkers. Was it just a hopeful gesture that turned out to be received, and the rest is history? Also, he mentions that if he had no son to give, he would give them a sheep. Does it imply that that the sacrifice was an annual or cyclical thing? Thank you for all your work. You are awesome. Thank you. So, yeah, my take on Craster is that he didn't get he hasn't got a contract with the others that says, if I give you this, you will do that for me. You will leave me alone if I give you my firstborn son. He's not got a written contract. He's not got an agreement with them. I think that going back, you hear lots of stories about the and this is in things like the World of Ice and Fire, about the wildlings leaving out gifts or offerings to the cold gods, and they have various names, but the implication is that these might be the others. Now, Craster seems to have been doing that, and then found that they did take his son. So what does he do then? He's worshipping what his understanding is of the cold gods, or whatever he calls them, and then he does it again, and it keeps going. And then he does think, or I think it's Gilly actually who does think, what happens? He's now giving them sheep. What happens after they run out? So this seems to just be a sort of a superstitious giving a sacrifice to the what he considers to be the gods, and they are actually taking them. It's not just I'm leaving this out there and nothing happens. They are actually taking what he's giving. So that seems to be what it is. He's not got a written contract. Mara Lee saying, in the book Fire and Blood, Silverwing the dragon refused to fly beyond the wall. This was the question that I answered a little bit earlier, Mara. So if you want to go back up a little bit. I answered that question a little bit earlier because I got a super chat question with the very similar question. Chaos Ballerina, this is thank you very much. Picking up a question for Emanon Fox. What do you think differentiates cold hands from your average everyday thrall or white? And Kevin Birch, what's at the North Pole? Snow and ice is my basic guess, but maybe that is the heart of winter at the North Pole. In terms of what differentiates cold hands from an everyday thrall or white, well, he appears he happily has a conversation with Bran, and seems to have his own personality. He's not just a white, a reanimated corpse. He seems to be him. How is he not a thrall? A thrall is a slave, effectively, so he seems not to be there. He seems not to be in anyone's control. He just seems to be loyal. So that is why I think that there's a good chance that he's just one of Bloodraven's loyalists from when he was Lord Commander and earlier. So he's not somebody. He's just not like an animated corpse. He is still him. He just is cold, a sort of a halfway thing. So Mara Lee saying, if Dany and her dragons ended at north, so I half answered this one earlier, Mara, so this was a follow-up to your question about Silverwing not flying north. If Dany and her dragons ended north, would they have the same reaction? I think they would have the same reaction. I don't think she's going to go that far north. If she does, my feel is that she could just fly them around the outside, because that's where the barrier seems to go to. It stops there, so she could fly around the outside, particularly going to somewhere like Hardhome. Knights who say sledge. Howdy, Robert. Howdy. Howdy doesn't sound good with my accent, but anyway, my best to you and Dan, as well as my continual thanks for your channel. Thank you. This is slightly off topic, which is fine. How do you think George R. R. Martin choosing to abandon his originally conceived trilogy model, or abandoning the 5-year gap for A Song of Ice and Fire, has changed or shaped what was being set up as the ending for the main characters and the final conflict with the White Walkers others? What is your personal feel for how we're going to end up, and how we're going to get there, and how we're going to get there has been altered by those changes in approach to the series? Your gut instincts on this stuff are splendidly enlightening. Thank you. I will happily give you a gut instinct on this. So and I will happily give you a gut instinct because he's obviously not told us, so we don't have something that we can say authoritatively. But my gut instinct is that the high level story is not changed by these structural changes. His structural changes seem to be, as much as anything else, making the story wider, more characters, more complexity, but the top level thematically and also with the key characters, I think, was decided relatively early on. So A Song of Ice and Fire, having that as a title, clearly he's thinking about ice and fire. He's thinking about these two twin threats. He's talked before about the Robert Frost poem, about, ice and fire could both destroy the world. So clearly was thinking from the very start about the others and the dragons as being the twin threats to Westeros. That is staying the same. And so how does humanity deal with those two threats is the high level thing. Bran was the first character that he thought of, and the summer snows was the first phrase he thought of, and that scene with the direwolf pups was the first scene that he wrote. The names of the pups, as we've mentioned many times, link across to the fates of their owners. That was done very, very early. So he had in his mind very early on a lot of the key ideas that we've got, which hint at Bran being summer. This is because he's the person who's going to survive beyond the winter and also beyond the spring, the immediate bit following on from all the war and devastation, but he's actually going to be king of the summer. Lady, obviously, clearly implies where Sansa's arc is going to be going on. Ghost, Jon coming back from the dead. These things were decided very early on. So I don't think he has changed huge amounts about any of that, really. He makes a very big play about this fact that he's a gardener writer in the way that he describes it. So he allows the characters and the situations to develop, and as he's writing, he allows them to be guiding his writing rather than coming up with a plan and sticking to it. But the further and the deeper into this story he's got, the more tied in he has become, because he set up foreshadowing, he set up character arcs, he set up a whole series of things that mean that the big beats of the story are there. And this is what he said to the showrunners on Game of Thrones. He told them the big beats of the story. He told them how character stories were going to end. I mentioned earlier about the direwolf howling thing. He clearly thought he included that early on because he clearly had that thought of an ending early on. So I don't think it has changed too much. The 5-year gap thing is tricky because he wanted everyone to grow up, but I think he's just made everyone a little bit more mature. He's kind of fudged it a little bit. I mean, it's quite a hard thing because Bran is still very young in the books, but he is wanting him to have a very important role in the story. He is not going to be able to grow up another 5 years, but he has created a lot of characters who do things at a much younger age. So and he drops in, so and so's really old, they must be in their early 20s now. That he's said this a few times. So I think that he's sort of fudged the 5-year gap thing. There are a couple of times. The classic example is Ned Dane, who he couldn't roll that he now appears to have given to Darkstar. So he has done some things to just create extra characters. Now to bridge a gap he's got in terms of timing. So the short answer is I don't think it's changed much at a high level. At a lower level, yes, lots of the characters will have lots of different changes because of the fact that it wasn't so big. So it was a lot bigger story than he originally planned. The other thing to note when you are reading book 1 is how the things that he has dropped, the bits of information that he is dropping in there as important, come thick and fast in book 1, particularly in the first half of book 1. And then he slows down hugely when you start getting into the later books. So all of the bits of foreshadowing. The classic example is the Isle of Faces. The Isle of Faces is mentioned, I happen to know this, mentioned 11 times in the entirety of A Song of Ice and Fire. 4 of those are in the first few chapters of book 1. Then 6 of them happen in one conversation between Bran and Jojen and Mira, and then we've got one more a lot later. It's all packed into the very beginning of the story, and it's like, whoa, hang on, we need to rein back on this because that is going to be important, but we can't keep on talking about it at that, or everybody's going to be aware of how important it is. So he's reined it back in again, and then we're going to see it start to gain importance again through the Winds of Winter, and then in the Dream of Spring we'll see why. So that's the kind of thing, if you're reading book 1, you will see a lot of these things dropped in. The House Dane, lots of backstory in the first half of book 1. We get less and less of it the further in we go. Question from or Abby, Abby with the Irish name, I shall call you. Loving the stream tonight, Robert. Any idea what the hell snarks and grumpkins are? No. They are deliberately mocking things. This is the idea is that early on, this was being written as low fantasy. You get book one, the very first chapter, the prologue, and the very last chapter of Danny, with the dragons being born, accepted. It's low fantasy. Magic is not just not really mentioned. It's not a part of life, and the characters that we're taught to think of as being wise and knowledgeable, people like Maester Lewin, people like Tyrion, scoff at the idea of magic and the others, and he opens up to make it higher and higher fantasy the further into the story we go. But in book one, there isn't, and so one of the ways to do that is to create snarks and grumpkins. They sound like, it's really good language usage. They sound like children's story made up characters, the kind of thing that Dr. Seuss might come up with. That kind of feel is that they're children's stories, and so they're used in a kind of a jokey way. What they actually are, I mean, I don't know. There's characters from stories, like monsters in stories, but they're not real. Question from where have we got up to? Mara Lee. Do you think George R. R. Martin will give readers any more insights into the others, especially in his next book? For example, do they live in structures, in a village? Do they have a leader? So I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I don't think we're going to see that. I think they've got a culture, but it's not a culture as we understand the sort of civilization from a sort of very human perspective, because they're a different kind of life. Are we going to learn more? I think we're going to learn more through Benjen. I think he is the most likely person to be giving us some information. But George R. R. Martin will keep them a mystery through a reasonable amount of the Winds of Winter, because the threat comes from us not really understanding who they are, what they're capable of. This is what makes them quite scary. The moment you actually go, well, they can do this and not this, and these are their weaknesses, and this is what they're trying to achieve, that actually makes them less scary. Not knowing exactly how they could be defeated or what they want, that's what makes them scary. So I think George R. R. Martin is going to keep hold of that for as long as possible. Catherine Furseth. Actually, nope, just going back one first. Sir Bunk the Lunk. Greetings from Boston. Hello, Boston. Here's my question. But there were dragons in Westeros once, long before the Targaryens came, as our own legends and histories tell us. This is the world of Ice and Fire. When were the dragons all over Westeros, and what happened to them? Is it possible the others were created to fight these dragons rather than the first men, as we're led to believe? So when were they? A long time ago. We're not told, but yes, a long, long time ago. Why did they stop roaming over Westeros? The implication is that humanity learned how to master them, bond with them in some way. Probably not initially. We've been covering this in the last couple of live streams. Probably not initially with the Valyrians, but in the civilizations which preceded that, they learned something of how to do that, and that I think that was what meant that the dragons were no longer everywhere. They were actually being contained more. So this, I think, is the part of the history of how humanity came to dominate, was that they managed to somehow control the dragons. And is it possible the others were created to fight these dragons rather than the first men? Well, as I said, you have to look at what is it that if you were creating something to fight a dragon, what would you make as a weapon? Well, probably they should be immune to fire. Probably they should be able to fly. Probably a few other things as well. But are the others like that? Fire actually seems to be a thing which is a problem for them. And can they fly? No. So they don't seem to be a good weapon against dragons. They do seem to be a good weapon against humans because they are immune to human weapons and all of the other things that I've been talking about before. So I don't think it was to be against the dragons. Sebastian Holden, was the fierce attack at the Fist because of John? Craster knew John is Stark and knows where they go. Did he tip them off? Did the attack have a purpose? I don't think Craster tipped them off. I don't think Craster has this relationship with the others that's a sort of chatting with them, agreeing stuff with them. I think he just treats them like I'm offering up something to the others, to the cold gods. I think that's the way that works. Why was there the attack at the Fist of the First Men? Unless we get a stronger battle plan, I'm of the view that this was the others sweeping through, trying to clear out north of the wall. That's what they seem to be doing. They're moving south, so they're doing the Fist of the First Men. Then they're going to be moving across the clear out the Frostfangs, and then we're seeing them going all the way across to Hardhome, and so then they can be sure that there are no humans hidden behind them, and they can start concentrating on the wall. That seems to be what they're doing. So I don't think it was a deliberate attempt to get John per se. There's certainly doesn't seem to be much evidence that they were targeting John in all his time north of the wall. They attacked Sam, they attacked lots of other members of the Night's Watch, but John, he's not had that climactic battle we had in the Battle of Hardhome on the TV show. That's not there in the books, so we don't seem to have that yet. They don't seem to be targeting him, which kind of also incidentally undermines this idea that they're looking for Azor Ahai reborn. That doesn't seem to be what that. I think they're just trying to sweep through, clean the area north of the wall of all of the humans. Catherine Furseth saying, thanks again for brightening our week. You are very welcome. To me, the Frostfangs themselves seem pretty rough, perhaps similar to Iceland or Greenland. Well, I pictured the land of always winter as being like the internal parts of the South Pole, uninhabitable for humans or living things. Do you think this is right, and that the land of always winter was never inhabited by neither the children of the forest nor the first men? Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think, well, that part of the world was always cold. I think that's always frozen. I think that probably the Frostfangs are about as far as humanity can easily survive because they offer caves and some valleys and things like that. But beyond that, just frozen nothingness. It's not a good place for humanity to try to survive. So in terms of Iceland and Greenland, yeah, I guess that's probably sounds about right. The far side of the Frostfangs, some of it's actually not as far north. The Frostfangs are more north-south than east-west, so it's not like cutting off all of the complete north. But it seems that the bit on the western side is sort of heading towards the lands of always winter and then up towards the pole. So were the children of the forest ever there? Probably not. You also asked if I could say a bit about the common traits of wildling cultures. Yeah, so as I said, the wildlings, lots of different tribes, lots of different individual cultures, the kinds of things that unite them. They all consider themselves to be free, so they don't have kings. That's something that unites them as a whole. They have this clear concept and understanding that the world, the earth, is for everyone to share, so there's no ownership of it. You can't own a bit of land. That's not your bit of land. That bit of land is for everyone, which also makes the notion of property a lot more fluid. So if you want something, you go and get it, and if you're strong enough to get it, then it's yours until somebody gets it from you. So that creates a potential for sort of a lot more aggressive culture. There's a strong emphasis, it seems, on sort of keeping your word, being a man or woman of your word. And there's also, like you get in the North, this idea of being together against the elements and understanding that you're teaching other people and you have to be with the other people in order to survive. Just being on your own doesn't really work. You have to work as a team. Eric Ferg, what's your insights into the undead actions of Jafer Flowers and Othor? These are the two people. They're members of the Night's Watch. They went north with Benjen, and then it was their bodies that were discovered that then became whites, brought south and become whites. Othor was the one who attacked Jeor Mormont. Did the others plan targeted assassinations of the Night's Watch officers? And what happened to the other 4 rangers Benjen was with? So did Jafer and Othor play dead near the wall to be brought inside? So a few questions there. Did they play dead? I think so. Effectively, their eyes were noted to be blue before they were brought through. So the magic was done beforehand. Did they target the leadership of the Night's Watch? It certainly seems that way, that they went after the Lord Commander. It seems, yes, he was in the same building or area, but it seemed very focused and targeted. And what happened to the other 4 rangers? Well, I don't think we've heard back from the other rangers that were with Benjen, but I think the implication is that, as I said with Benjen, they went on. I suspect we'll find just Benjen surviving that. Targaryen Time Lord. Hi, Robert. If you had the chance to climb the wall with a guarantee you would survive, would you take the challenge? I don't really like heights, I have to say. If I could be dropped on the top of the wall with a handrail and be able to look at the view, then I would happily do that. But climbing it, no, not really for me, I'm afraid. Eric Ferg, why did the others wait to attack the Free Folk in force until Stannis' victory? Were they hoping to use the Free Folk to get past the wall or just weaken the Night's Watch? Were the others limited prior attacks on the Free Folk a way to herd them to the wall? Yeah, I think so. So it's the plan, such as we see it, we don't see much of the plan. The plan seems to be pushing southwards, so they're just trying to keep on getting people moving southwards. If they can get humans fighting humans, that's fantastic, because then they've got dead bodies that they can raise. So they seem not to be just there manically trying to kill anyone they get close to. They're trying to herd them, as you say. I think that's a good word, to herd them southwards, and just keep on remorselessly coming. Why did they wait until after Stannis' victory? I think that we still haven't seen the full force of the others, it has to be said. I think they're still doing targeted things. They do target the Night's Watch. They clearly know that the Night's Watch have a role of defending the wall, so they are targeting them. They clearly, the ones with Benjen, the ones with Waymar Royce, they attacked at the Fist of the First Men. They do seem to be targeting the Night's Watch. Beyond that, the herding thing, there's not much else we can sort of say. Lady Pushkin's saying, hi, Robert. Other lands have always winter because of the others or natural geography. Also, with the inevitable death of the others / Night King, if he appears, do you think this will change? Yes, a bit of both. It's partly geography because it is in the north, and partly because around the others it is cold, because they do bring the cold. So it's a bit of both, and so part of that will change once the others get pushed back in whatever way. Kendra Summers, corn. Do you think there's significance to the choice of this word from Mormont's Raven? Reference to the Corn King myth, perhaps. Interestingly, in Dance with Dragons, John picks up on the words corn, king, snow. Also, not forgetting that the three-eyed crow in Bran's coma dream says, say, got any corn? So, yes, lots of layers to this. So, J.R. Mormont's Raven is very suspicious. He clearly has he's quite clever, but not just clever in terms of parroting back words. He picks words which are important, and certainly around John, he starts talking about king, and when Sam is at Craster's Keep and needs to run, then the Raven basically shouts at him, run, 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 and things like that. So quick, quick, quick. So he seems to be actually communicating. Ditto, he makes a hugely important intervention during the election of John to become the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. So he does seem to be playing a role. The corn thing, I think you've really noted an important point there about the link across to the three-eyed crow, the one in Bran's dream, who asks for corn. We're supposed to see the link there. This is Bloodraven both times. Definitely, in my view, Bloodraven is the person in Bran's dream. Bloodraven is walking into Mormont's Raven, and therefore spying on John and what's going on in the Night's Watch. So that's the link we're supposed to make. The Corn King, this is a sort of a story of rebirth, the king who's born in spring and then dies again, because this is the natural rhythm of life. There might be some hint of that because of the sort of the rebirth elements to John. I don't think that's where George R. R. Martin's mind was going in particular with that. But I do like the thinking. It's a nice idea. Diego Godoy, hola Robert, hola. My question is regarding Craster's deal with the others. Why do they just take his sons? Why not also some of the daughters? Do the others care about the gender of the babies? I think it's because he is giving his sons, not the daughters. That's his choice to do that. He's offering up a sacrifice, and he is doing that. He wants to keep the daughters for his own weird reasons. So Robert Ross, hello Robert. How did the wildlings get stuck beyond the wall? Whether it was built by the first men, children, or others, why would they be excluded or choose to stay there? Well, I think there's a couple of answers to this one. The first is it might have been built and they had the option to come south, and they just thought, you know what, the others aren't here. I'm happy here. This is where I grew up. I want to stay here. Or maybe there are some people who just moved up there. This is thousands of years of history, so I think it's probably a combination of this. Some people just happened to be north of the wall at the time. Some people maybe moved north of the wall at some point because legends of the others just became legends. So I think it's a combination of all of that. It's the wall itself is in a way arbitrary. It's clearly planned because that's a sort of I'm going to say a pinch point. It's not really a pinch point because it's very, very long, but between the gorge and the sea. And if you're building it there, you just sort of say to people, well, you know, decide where you want to be, but you can always row around if you want to get past. The original intention does not seem to have been to keep the wildlings out. That was something which grew over time. Johnny Giantsbane, greetings from the lands of always winter. As this live stream is about my home, I thought I should speak up. The wall is such a great literary conception. It's much more than the physical barrier. Old Nan says that it holds back the monsters, ghouls, and giants. The dragons would not fly over it, and has properties that are tied to the Night's Watch, such as password-controlled gates. Your opinion on the wall in general and its mysteries would be great. I might take Jonesy's 6 skins with me south this summer and need to know how to get past. Yeah, I think I've covered most of this one already, Johnny, so hopefully you've got a strong idea of this. I think what I would say, just to reiterate, is that this is not as fearsome a barrier as it might appear to be. If you are just a normal human wishing to get past, you could go under it in the tunnels, you could go through it. Yes, there's one way at Castle Black. There's also the Black Gate. There's various other gates in various other places. You could climb over it. This seems to be something people do literally dozens of times. You could sail around it. You could walk through the ravine at the other side. This is actually not as big a barrier as you might think it is simply by looking at it. It's more sort of a symbol as much as anything else. If you wish to get past, you can get past. Actually, I've not yet thanked my patrons. Patrons, thank you. I do this every live stream. I mean it every live stream. I cannot do what I do without your support. That's how I manage to devote the time that I do to creating the videos, doing the research for the live streams like this. Thank you so much. If you would like to support this channel, if you would like to get access to some stuff I do just for my patrons, the best thing to do is check out my Patreon page. There's a link down in the description. Joel Bellucci. Hello, Robert. Joel here from St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm a brand new patron. Welcome. To my Patreon. Just wanted to thank you for being a port of intelligent calm on the storm-tossed cyber sea, which is a wonderful phrase and a very kind thing to say. Thank you very much. I've got my last question from my patrons now. So this is a good chance if you've got any more questions in the chat, a good chance to drop them in there. I'll try and pick up as many of them as I can going through. The Knights Who Say Sledge. Howdy, Robert. Oh, actually, this is the one I've already answered. I must have cut and pasted it twice. This is how it works. So I'm now done with my questions from my patrons. So thank you. I will pick up some questions from the chat. Foreshadowing saying, since Tyrion is the one to tell Jon the truth of the wall and the watch, do you think he'll be the one to tell Jon about the realities of being a king, convincing him not to take it? Quite possibly. The Tyrion-Jon, this is something which really struck me on my reread. The Tyrion-Jon relationship is a strong one. They shake hands and call each other friend. Every chapter that they've got, there is some together. There is some a clear reference to their similarities. They are this bond that they built in that short period is going to be repaid later in the book. So is he going to be the one to tell Jon about the realities of being a king and convincing him not to take it? I don't think Jon wants to take it at all. I don't think he will need convincing not to take it. I think it was more people trying to persuade him that he should take it. Cursed Ballerina, why hasn't Hardhome been repopulated and restored? Is it magically tainted in the vein of Ashai? Well, it's the room after it was destroyed in such a horrific way, then it was shunned by the wildlings. There were rumors of ghosts and ghouls and all sorts of stuff there. Whether that's true, we do not know, but it was just seen as a place of doom for them, so they just left it alone. Clearly what happened was horrific. So whatever, even if you don't buy the solution I quite like, whatever it was really, really bad, and did stain the memory of that place for a very long time. Mr. Man Jones, I wish we actually saw Snarks and Grumpkins. Yep, that would be fantastic. Quick flick through. Let's see if there's any more questions. I might be... Andrew K, the point of the barrier is not to protect the humans getting around it. The magical entities designed to protect, and seems to be effective in that respect. Yeah, so this is a magical barrier preventing magical things passing through one way to the other, not to prevent humans from moving to and fro. I think... Matthew Jacob V, what is Melisandre's and Mance Raider's end game if they wrote the pink letter? They're trying to get Jon to abandon the Night's Watch and go down and retake Winterfell, because Stannis is going there, but you know, he's got a small and diminished force, and really they want Jon to go and help support him. So that was an attempt to provoke him into it, which was successful. But then they did not foresee that people would then try and kill him. Andrew K, with the wildlings often stand-ins for the others in where they are from, descriptive words and symbolism could hint at a possible role with Jon and the others. Prince that was promised to them, mayhaps. I think Jon's role is going to be... largely what we saw on the show. I think at a very high level, I don't think he is going to be their prince that was promised, but his coming back from the dead will have some echoes of that. He's always, Jon, his role is ice and fire, part Targaryen, part Stark. The symbolism for him is always dragonglass. He's grey. He's somewhere in the middle. That is what he is about. So he is not just going to be this Azor Ahai figure. He's also going to be having some bits, and this is the having once been dead and been brought back is very much an echo of sort of the others. So that's the symbolic thing that's going on with Jon. Okay, I think with that I will start drawing it to a close. I will not be here next week, I'm afraid. So I've got a week off from this next week. And then after that, I will have a think whether there's another one in this series that we still need to do. If you can think of something else in the series, then let me know. But at some point in the next few weeks, I'm going to start on doing some occasional Lord of the Rings live streams. So if you've got any Lord of the Rings questions, you can bring them for that. But keep an eye out for it. I will let you know what the topic is. Maybe I'll do another open Q&A before moving on into the sort of the Lord of the Rings world as well. Don't worry, I'm not leaving A Song of Ice and Fire behind at all. This will still be my Thursday live streams. The main thing is going to carry on being A Song of Ice and Fire, but I think every now and then people keep on telling me they want a Lord of the Rings live stream, so I will do one every now and then. Okay, that's it for now. As I say, if you are at all interested in my Patreon, either supporting this channel or getting access to some Patreon-only benefits, there is a link appearing up here if you're watching back later. And if you want to watch more of these live streams, then there is a link appearing somewhere around here. Okay, that's all for this time. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you again soon.